Most animals do not get much time to grow old. Their bodies rise, burn brightly, reproduce, and disappear before age can become a long, visible story. But humans are different. We do not simply become old. We enter old age slowly, layer by layer, while memory, care, weakness, knowledge, and loss remain inside the same body. In nature, this is not an obvious gift. It is a cost. A long human life requires food, protection, patience, and other people. So why would evolution allow one animal to fade so slowly, instead of ending the story much sooner? Why do humans grow old so slowly compared to most animals? Most animals do not get much time to grow old. Their bodies rise, burn brightly, reproduce, and disappear before age can become a long, visible story. But humans are different. We do not simply become old. We enter old age slowly, layer by layer, while memory, care, weakness, knowledge, and loss remain inside the same body. In nature, this is not an obvious gift. It is a cost. A long human life requires food, protection, patience, and other people. So why would evolution allow one animal to fade so slowly, instead of ending the story much sooner? Why do humans grow old so slowly compared to most animals? To begin, we should not imagine old age as something that simply arrives at the end of life. For humans, old age is part of a much longer shape. It is connected to the way the body grows, the way the brain learns, the way children depend on adults, and the way memory stays inside a group. This is why the question is not only about wrinkles, grey hair, or weak bones. It is about why one animal came to live with such a long curve of change. Many living creatures pass through life under sharper pressure. Their bodies must reach maturity quickly enough to survive hunger, weather, injury, infection, and predators. For them, time is often narrow. A body that waits too long may never reproduce. A body that spends too much energy repairing itself for a distant future may lose the present. Nature does not reward a long life just because it seems beautiful to us. It rewards patterns that leave descendants behind. In that cold sense, a long old age can look unnecessary, even expensive. An older body still needs food. It still needs warmth. It may move more slowly. It may heal less easily. It may need others more often than before. In a small human group, long before farms, cities, or written records, every extra mouth mattered. Every season asked the same quiet question: can this body still belong to the group's survival? This is where humans become strange. Our species did not build life around speed alone. Human children are slow to become independent. They need years of feeding, watching, imitation, correction, protection, and social learning. The human body begins life unfinished, in a very important sense. It must grow inside relationships. It must learn landscapes, tools, voices, danger, trust, and timing. That long beginning changed the meaning of adulthood. A human adult was not only a body strong enough to reproduce. A human adult was also a carrier of skills, memory, habits, and care. When life begins slowly, it can also make room for a slower ending. The two ends of human life seem distant, but they are connected by dependence. A child needs the group because the child is not ready. An old person may need the group because the body is changing. Between them, the adult body works, protects, gathers, remembers, teaches, and absorbs the weight of others. This does not mean early humans always cared perfectly for the old, and it does not mean every older person lived safely. The past was not gentle, but the human pattern allowed old age to become visible in a way that many animals never experience. A person could pass beyond the strongest years and still remain inside the life of others. This is not a simple miracle of intelligence. It is not a single invention. It is a slow arrangement between body, environment, and social life. The first humans did not step outside nature. They still faced hunger, cold, pain, childbirth, disease, accidents, and the uncertainty of each landscape. Yet their survival was not carried by muscle alone. It was carried by shared attention. A path remembered from a dry season, a food that should be avoided, a place where water returns, a way to calm conflict, a way to hold a child, a way to read the sky or the tracks in soil. All of these could live inside aging bodies. Before history was written on stone or paper, it could only remain alive if some people remained alive long enough to hold it. That is why slow aging feels like a deep clue. It suggests that the human body did not belong only to itself. It belonged to a chain of dependence stretching backward and forward through time. Still, we should not answer too soon. The mystery is only beginning. Human old age may look familiar because we see it everywhere around us. But in the wider animal world, it remains a strange, costly, slow-burning question. What kind of life becomes so dependent on time that even fading cannot be separated from survival? A human life does not look strange when we only compare it with other humans. We are used to seeing infants, children, adults, and older faces sharing the same world. We are used to the idea that a person can spend many years becoming strong, and many more years becoming less strong. But when we place humans beside much of animal life, the shape begins to feel unusual. Many animals live closer to the edge of immediate danger. Their bodies are tested quickly. Their chances must be used quickly. Their young may have to stand, swim, fly, hide, or feed themselves far sooner than a human child ever could. In those lives, time is compressed. Survival often depends on moving through the necessary stages before the world interrupts them. The human body followed another pattern. It did not hurry into independence. It did not build childhood as a brief pause before adulthood. It allowed weakness to last at the beginning, and later allowed weakness to return at the end. This is not how we usually think about being human, because we often see long life as a victory. But from the colder view of evolution, weakness is always expensive. A young child who cannot feed itself must be carried by others. An older person who cannot move as quickly may also need others. Between those two fragile shores, human adulthood became a long bridge of care, labor, memory, and protection. That bridge is one of the first clues to why human aging is so slow. It suggests that our species was shaped not only by individual bodies, but by the relationships that held those bodies together. Long before houses, fields, temples, or written names, human life had to unfold inside groups small enough to know one another and vulnerable enough to depend on one another. A single body could not easily contain the whole human strategy. The child needed adults. Adults needed cooperation. The older body, even when less powerful, could still remain connected to the work of living. This does not mean age was always safe. It does not mean the past was kind. It means only that human survival opened a space where life after peak strength did not become meaningless at once. In many animals, a body that loses speed, fertility, or strength may quickly become exposed to hunger or predation. Among humans, the decline of one ability did not always remove every value. A slower body might still know where a river bends after dry months. A weaker hand might still know how to shape a tool, prepare food, soothe a child, remember a death, or recognize a pattern in the land. These examples should be held carefully, not as romantic certainty about every ancient group, but as reasonable possibilities within the broader human pattern of social learning. The deeper point is that human life became increasingly tied to information that did not vanish when strength began to fade. That is a very different kind of animal bargain. The body could age, but the stored traces of experience could still matter. This slow human path also begins at the very start of life. Human babies arrive helpless compared with many other mammals. Their brains continue developing for a long time after birth. Their movements, language, attention, and judgment all require long periods of practice. This long beginning would have placed a heavy burden on early human groups. Food had to be found not only for strong adults, but also for the young who could not yet provide for themselves. Protection had to extend beyond the self. Time had to be invested in a future that was not immediately useful. A species built around such delayed independence already lives against urgency. It accepts that survival can depend on waiting. When that kind of life history exists, old age can take on a different shape. The body is not merely a machine for fast reproduction. It is part of a longer social process, where learning, memory, and care move across generations. This is why the question in the title cannot be answered by saying humans are simply tougher, smarter, or more fortunate. The slow aging of humans belongs to a larger rhythm. Slow childhood, long learning, shared food, group protection, cultural memory, and gradual decline. The beginning of human life and the ending of human life both reveal the same quiet fact. We are an animal that became deeply dependent on time. Our bodies did not only survive by burning bright and vanishing quickly, they survived by making room for what could be carried forward. In that room, age became more than damage. It became evidence that human life had stretched beyond the single moment, beyond the single hunt, beyond the single birth, into a wider chain of memory, need, and care. And once a species begins to live inside such a chain, the slow fading of the body is no longer just an ending. It becomes another part of the unanswered question of why human time became so long. The longer we look at human aging, the less it appears like a simple biological accident. It begins to look like a shadow cast by the whole human way of living. A body that grows slowly often carries a different future from a body that rushes. A species that depends on learning cannot treat time as a narrow passage. It must make room for memory, imitation, correction, patience, and repeated contact between the young and the experienced. This does not mean evolution planned old age as a gift. Evolution does not plan in that way. It only preserves patterns that, in certain conditions, leave more surviving descendants than other patterns. But if a creature's survival begins to depend on information, then older bodies may remain part of life in ways that are not obvious at first glance. Strength fades, speed fades, fertility changes. Yet the traces of lived time may still remain useful inside a group that learns from other bodies. This is where the human path becomes quiet and unusual. A young animal may survive mostly by instinct, rapid growth, and the immediate demands of its environment. A human child must be shown the world for a long time. It must learn which sounds matter, which faces can be trusted, which tools change the hand, which plants are useful, which places are dangerous, and which habits hold a group together. Long before writing, before villages, before formal teaching, the human beginning was already a long apprenticeship. That long beginning made the presence of older people more meaningful, even if they were not always the strongest. In the earliest human landscapes, knowledge was not stored in books, maps, or carved records. It lived in bodies that had crossed seasons before. It lived in memory of hunger, shelter, birth, injury, conflict, and return. A person who had seen many dry months, many migrations, or many changes in the behavior of animals might carry something no young body could invent quickly. We should not turn this into a perfect story. Not every older person would have survived. Not every group would have protected the weak. The archaeological record is incomplete, and the deep past rarely gives us simple answers. Still, the general pattern of human life points toward a species in which survival was shared across ages. The young did not stand alone. Adults did not work only for themselves. Older people were not always removed from the chain when physical power declined. This slow chain is important because it changes how we understand the body. In many animals, the body is tightly tied to a short window of reproductive success. Once that window closes or weakens, the body may have little protection from the pressures around it. But humans built a life in which the body could remain socially connected beyond its strongest years. That does not remove the cost of aging. It makes the cost part of a larger arrangement. Food shared with an older person could seem costly in a hard season. Time spent caring for a weaker body could seem costly when danger was near. Yet, if the group itself depended on memory, guidance, and the continuity of care, then the presence of older bodies could not be judged only by muscle. Human old age slowly became visible because human survival slowly became more than the survival of one body at one moment. It became the survival of relationships through time. The first human communities did not need to understand this in words. They did not need theories of aging, life history, or evolution. Their lives simply unfolded under pressures that made dependence unavoidable. Children needed adults for many years. Mothers needed help. Groups needed cooperation. Skills needed repetition. Fire, tools, food sharing, and social learning tied one person's future to another person's memory. From that long beginning, the slow human ending becomes less surprising, though still not fully explained. Aging slowly may be one sign that our species did not solve survival by becoming free from weakness. Instead, humans survived by making weakness something the group could sometimes carry. The child's weakness at the beginning, the injured body in the middle, and the aging body near the end all belong to the same deeper pattern. Human life stretched because human beings became animals of extended dependence. That is the first doorway into the mystery. We do not grow old slowly simply because our bodies last. We grow old slowly inside a world our ancestors made together, a world where time itself became a shared burden, a shared memory, and a question still resting quietly inside every human face. Many animal bodies seem to live under a rule of urgency. They are born into worlds where danger arrives quickly, food may vanish quickly, and the chance to reproduce may be brief. This does not make their lives simple. It makes them tightly shaped by pressure. A small mammal that matures fast may not have the luxury of slow growth. A fish releasing many young into open water may not have the same bargain with time as a human child protected for years. An insect that completes its life in a short season may be built around timing so narrow that old age barely has space to appear. Across the living world there are many rhythms, and we should not pretend they all follow one pattern. Some animals live very long lives. Some age slowly in ways humans are still trying to understand. But for many species, especially those surrounded by high risk early in life, the body is pushed toward a faster exchange with the world. Grow, survive long enough, reproduce, and leave the future to descendants. Human life feels strange beside this, because our body does not seem designed only for speed. It waits. It learns. It remains unfinished for a long time. It spends years depending on others before it can fully protect itself. Then, much later, it may spend years declining without immediately disappearing. This double slowness, at the beginning and near the end, is one of the deepest differences between humans and many animals around us. The starting point of the human story is not the old person. It is the helpless child. From the beginning, human life required more time than many bodies in nature can afford. A newborn human cannot run with the group, search for food, judge danger, or understand the social world around it. It must be carried, fed, watched, warmed, protected, and taught. Its brain continues to develop through long experience. Its body grows into coordination slowly. Its survival depends not only on a mother's body, but often on a wider circle of care. This does not mean every early human group lived gently or that care was always equal. It means the basic human pattern made solitary survival nearly impossible for the young. In that pattern, time itself became a resource. A fast animal may survive by being ready early. A human survives by being supported while not yet ready. This is a costly way to live. It asks a group to invest energy into bodies that cannot yet return much. It asks adults to share food, attention, protection, and patience. Yet this slow beginning opened the door to something powerful. A young human could learn far more than a creature that had to be independent almost immediately. The child could absorb gestures, warnings, tool use, food habits, routes, sounds, emotions, and rules that were not written anywhere. Before writing, before farming, before permanent villages, the human mind was shaped inside living instruction. That kind of instruction needs time, and time needs bodies that remain present. This is where aging begins to connect with the whole human life pattern. A species that requires long learning may also benefit from longer overlap between generations. Children do not only need strong adults. They need repeated contact with people who have already lived through seasons, shortages, injuries, births, conflicts, and changes in the land. An older body may no longer be the fastest, but it may still belong to the memory system of the group. This does not turn old age into a perfect advantage. It remains a burden in many ways. Aging brings weakness, risk, and loss. But in humans, loss did not always erase usefulness at once. The body could decline while experience remained. The hand might be slower, but the pattern of making could still be known. The walk might be shorter, but the memory of a path could remain. The eyes might not see as clearly, but the mind might still recognize a season returning in a familiar shape. In many animals, aging is pressed hard by the outside world. A slower body may quickly become prey, or fail to compete, or lose access to food. Among humans, the social world could sometimes soften that pressure. Fire, shelter, shared food, and group defense did not remove danger, but they changed how danger reached the body. This is why the human body cannot be understood only as an individual machine. It aged inside a social environment that humans themselves were slowly creating. The slow human life was not separate from the beginning of humanity. It grew from the same deep root, a creature whose survival depended on learning too much, too slowly, from too many others, to live only by urgency. A faster animal body is not inferior to a slower human body. It is answering a different question from the environment. If a creature lives where most individuals are unlikely to survive for many years, then the safest biological strategy may be to mature early and reproduce before chance removes the opportunity. A small mammal hiding in grass, a bird exposed to weather and predators, or a fish whose young scatter into uncertain water may be shaped by pressures that favor speed. Their bodies are not built around long childhoods, long teaching, or long dependence after strength begins to fade. They are often built around immediacy. The world asks them to become useful to reproduction quickly because the future is not guaranteed. Humans, by contrast, carry a body that seems to argue with that urgency. We do not mature in the fastest possible way. Our young require long protection. Our learning stretches across years. Our adult lives are not only reproductive intervals but long periods of social work, memory, care, and adjustment. When human aging is placed beside these faster animal rhythms, it becomes clear that our slow old age did not appear alone. It belongs to a whole life shaped by delay. This delay begins in the body itself. The human brain is expensive to grow and slow to organize. The human hand is capable, but its usefulness depends on practice. The human voice can become language, but only inside years of listening and correction. The human social world is difficult, full of faces, obligations, warnings, alliances, and rules that no newborn can understand. A young human does not simply need calories, it needs a living environment of instruction. Long before schools, books, or formal lessons, the earliest human child had to learn from watching bodies already skilled in being human. It had to learn where food might be found, how tools changed the hand, how fire changed the night, how danger appeared in sound or silence, how anger moved through a group, and how trust was built or broken. These are not quick instincts alone. They are patterns slowly absorbed across time. That makes the human child costly, but also unusually open. A body that remains dependent can become a body that learns deeply. This is one reason the comparison with animals must be careful. Many animals learn, many care for young, many have complex social lives. Humans are not the only intelligent or social beings, but human life combines slow growth, heavy dependence, large-scale learning, and long social memory in a particularly intense way. That combination changed the value of time. If a young creature must learn for years before it can fully survive, then the presence of older and experienced bodies can matter in ways that are not measured by speed alone. In a human group, experience may remain useful after strength begins to soften. The older body may no longer be first in movement, but it may still hold knowledge of tools, places, food, seasons, and people. This is not a romantic picture of the past. It is a cautious way of seeing how a slow life could work. The deep human past was hard, and many lives ended early. Injury, childbirth, disease, hunger, and violence could cut life short. But the fact that danger existed does not erase the broader pattern. Human beings became a species in which survival could be shared across ages. The child depended downward into the care of adults. Adults depended sideways on one another. The older body, when it survived, could still remain tied to the group's memory. In faster animal lives, old age may have little time to unfold because the environment removes fragile bodies quickly. In humans, the social environment could sometimes hold a fragile body longer. A protected sleeping place, shared food, firelight, tools, and cooperative defense could soften some of the direct pressure from nature. They did not make humans safe. They made human life less purely immediate. This matters because slow aging requires more than a body capable of lasting. It also requires a world where lasting is not instantly punished. Human groups slowly created such a world, not by escaping nature, but by changing the terms of exposure. A cold night, a broken tooth, a weak season, or an injured leg could still be dangerous, but the individual was not always alone before that danger. In this sense, humans grew old slowly compared with many animals, not because the body was free from weakness, but because weakness could sometimes be surrounded. The animal body of urgency burns through its chances quickly because the world demands speed. The human body entered a different arrangement, where time, care, learning, and dependence made survival stretch beyond the strongest years. The mystery remains open, but the first contrast is now clearer. Many animals live as if the future must be seized early, while humans became a creature whose future had to be carried slowly by others. To understand why human aging feels slow, we must hold two truths together. First, many animals are not designed for a long, visible decline because their lives are shaped by risk that arrives early. Second, humans did not become slow aging simply by becoming safer. The human path was still dangerous, still exposed, still uncertain. What changed was not the disappearance of danger, but the way danger met the body. A small animal alone in open grass may have little protection once speed is lost. A creature that depends on quick reproduction may leave few reasons for the body to maintain itself far beyond that early window. But a human body lived inside a web of other bodies. It was fed by hands, warmed by voices, warmed by fire, guided by memory and watched during sleep. This web did not remove the cold logic of nature. It bent it slightly. It allowed some individuals to remain alive even when their bodies were no longer at their strongest. That slight bending, repeated across generations, helped create the conditions in which old age could become a long human experience. The deep beginning of human life was never only individual. A child could not become human alone. It needed years inside a group before it could carry the skills required for survival. That one fact already makes human life different from many faster animal lives. If the young require long care, then adults must live long enough and remain connected enough to provide it. If skills require years of practice, then experience becomes more valuable. If the land changes with seasons, droughts, migrations, and memory of past danger, then a mind that has seen more than one cycle may hold something useful. None of this means every older human was protected. None of it means ancient life was kind. It means the human way of surviving made room for time in a way that many lives in nature do not. A body could become slower and still remain inside the circle of usefulness, because usefulness was not measured only by speed. The comparison with animals becomes clearer here. Many species solve survival by producing quickly, producing often, or maturing early enough to meet danger before it ends the opportunity. Humans solved survival in a stranger way. We invested heavily in a small number of dependent young. We built learning into childhood. We let social memory become part of survival. We carried food, shared warnings, shaped tools, controlled fire, and lived with meanings that one body alone could not invent from nothing. This slow strategy made human life costly from the beginning. It also made the later years more possible. If the group must already support bodies that cannot yet survive alone, then dependence is not an exception in human life. It is built into the system. The old body near the end of life reflects, in a quiet mirror, the child's body at the beginning. Both show that humans became an animal whose survival was never fully private. This is why old age among humans cannot be explained only as decay. Decay is real. Muscles weaken, bones change. Senses may dull, recovery may take longer. But in a human setting, those losses do not immediately erase the whole person from the group survival world. The body may lose speed while memory remains. It may lose endurance while judgment remains. It may lose reproductive possibility while care, instruction, and social presence remain. These possibilities did not need to be perfect to matter. They only needed to matter enough, often enough, across deep time, to make longer life less wasteful than it first appears. Many animals face a world that cuts away weakness quickly. Humans slowly made a world where weakness could sometimes be held. That may be one of the first cold answers beneath the question, though not the final one. We grow old slowly compared with many animals because the human body entered a life where time itself became shared. Shared in childhood, shared in danger, shared in memory, and shared again in decline. The animal built for urgency burns bright because the future may not wait. The human body, strangely, was shaped in a world where the future had to be carried by others before it could be lived alone, and perhaps that is why our fading became so long, so visible, and still so difficult to fully understand. Human old age did not begin at the end of life. It began much earlier, in the slow way a human body first becomes itself. Before a person can grow old slowly, that person must first grow up slowly. This is one of the most important clues in the whole question. Humans do not rush into maturity the way many animals must. A human child is not born ready for the demands of the world. The body is small, the muscles are weak, the movements are uncertain, and the mind is open in a way that is both dangerous and powerful. A young human must be protected through a long period when it cannot survive alone. This long beginning is not a small detail. It is part of the same deep pattern that later makes human aging unusual. A species that takes a long time to become independent has already chosen, in evolutionary terms, a slower bargain with time. It is accepting delay at the very beginning of life. It is placing survival not only inside the body of the young, but inside the care, patience, and memory of others. Long before there were written records, settled towns, or organized schools, the human child entered the world as a learner. It had to learn the shape of faces, the meaning of voices, the danger of certain animals, the use of tools, the movement of seasons, the taste of foods, the rules of the group, and the quiet signals of fear or trust. These things could not be gained instantly. They required repeated days, repeated mistakes, repeated guidance, and repeated presence. In many animal lives, the young must become competent quickly because the world does not wait. In humans, the world still did not wait, but the group sometimes made waiting possible. That is the strange point. Human beings did not survive by making every child strong from the start. They survived by surrounding weakness long enough for learning to become strength. This slow childhood helps explain why human aging cannot be separated from human social life. The old body near the end of life and the child's body near the beginning both reveal the same truth. Humans are built around dependence. The child depends because it has not yet learnt enough. The older person may depend because the body has begun to lose some of what it once had. Between them stands the adult world, carrying food, protection, memory, and labor across time. This does not mean every human society valued every older person in the same way. It does not mean the past was gentle, or that age always brought respect. Deep history was uneven, and survival could be harsh. But the larger human pattern made long overlap between generations possible and often useful. A child who learns slowly benefits from adults who have had time to learn. A group that depends on shared knowledge benefits when knowledge remains alive in more than one generation. This connection between slow childhood and slow aging is not a simple cause, but it is a strong direction. The human body did not first become slow only when hair turned grey. It was slow from the beginning. It took time to grow. It took time to learn. It took time to become a full participant in the group. This delay would have been costly. Adults had to feed children who could not yet gather enough for themselves. They had to protect young bodies that could not run well, judge well, or understand danger clearly. But the cost carried a possible return. A child who survived this long dependence could become a highly flexible adult, able to use tools, language, memory, cooperation, and judgment in ways that fast growth alone could not produce. Once this slower life history existed, the later years also gained a new meaning. Human life was not organized only around a brief peak of strength. It was organized around the movement of knowledge and care through time. The roots of slow old age are therefore hidden inside the cradle of slow childhood. To ask why humans fade so slowly is also to ask why humans took so long to begin. Somewhere deep in our origin, before history had names, the human body became a creature of delay, and delay became one of the quiet foundations of our long aging. The slow growth of the human body becomes more unusual when we remember what childhood was for. It was not only a waiting room before adulthood, it was the long workshop where a person learned how to belong to a human world. A young human had to grow into balance, speech, attention, memory, tool use, social judgment, and emotional control. None of these came complete at birth. They required years of repeated contact with other people. In this sense, the human child was not simply unfinished in body, it was unfinished in culture. It needed a world already made by others before it could become fully human. This matters for aging, because a species that gives so much time to learning also changes the value of older time. If survival depends only on quick strength, then a long childhood is dangerous. But if survival depends on learning what others know, then a long childhood becomes part of the strategy. The child becomes a place where the past enters the future. Before writing, before measured calendars, before maps drawn on skins or clay, knowledge had to pass from living body to living body. It moved through gesture, imitation, warning, correction, memory, and repeated practice. A child learned not only by being told, but by watching the same action many times. A hand shaping stone, a body carrying fire, a face becoming serious at a certain sound, a group moving away from a dangerous place, all of these taught without needing formal lessons. This kind of learning takes time. It also requires that experienced people remain near the young. The older a person became, the more seasons and accidents that body may have witnessed. That did not make every older person useful in every situation, and it did not protect everyone from hardship. But it did mean that time lived could become part of the group's equipment. A tool can break, a shelter can fall. A path can be covered by weather, but memory held inside a living person can return when the same problem appears again. This is one reason human life stretched differently from many animal lives. The human body was not only reproducing genes, it was helping reproduce ways of living. That process begins with childhood, but it does not end when the child becomes physically mature. Human beings continue learning from one another through much of life. They refine skills, remember mistakes, adjust to new land, repeat stories, and pass warnings forward. The slow body and the learning mind became tied together. A long youth allowed the brain to absorb a complicated social and environmental world. A longer adult life allowed that absorbed world to remain available for others. The slow decline of age, then, can be seen as part of a larger tempo. Human life did not move in a single quick burst. It unfolded in layers. The first layer was dependence. The next was learning. The next was contribution. Later came decline, but decline did not erase everything at once. The body could lose some power while still carrying habits, language, recognition, and care. This is important because it keeps us from turning aging into a simple failure. Aging is real damage and change. It brings loss. It narrows some abilities. It makes the body less certain. But in humans, the end of maximum strength was not always the end of participation. The roots of that fact go back to the beginning, when no human child could participate fully either, yet the group still carried the child forward. The earliest human communities, wherever they lived, had to solve the problem of long immaturity. They had to make room for beings who were not yet useful in a narrow physical sense. Once a species lives this way, it becomes accustomed to a survival system wider than immediate usefulness. A body can matter before it is strong, and a body can still matter after strength has softened. This does not mean life was easy. It means the human pattern made dependence ordinary. The young depended on older hands. Adults depended on one another. The aging depended again, sometimes quietly, sometimes heavily. Around that circle, time gathered. Slow childhood and slow old age are therefore not separate mysteries. They are two ends of the same human rhythm, a rhythm that began when our ancestors became creatures who needed many years to learn the world before they could fully live in it. The slow beginning of human life also changed the meaning of generations. In a faster life, one generation may replace another with little overlap. The young appear, grow quickly, reproduce, and the older bodies vanish before memory can become a long bridge. But humans made overlap important. A child could be born into a world where parents, older relatives, and sometimes very old members of the group were still present. These overlapping lives created a quiet structure that was different from simple survival. The young did not only inherit bodies, they inherited ways of seeing. They inherited warnings, habits, gestures, paths, food knowledge, tool knowledge, and social memory. None of this required writing. It only required living people who lasted long enough to carry what had happened before. This is why slow aging begins to look less like an isolated feature and more like a consequence of the whole human rhythm. If children take a long time to become ready, then the group benefits from having many ages present at once. A young adult may have strength, but not yet the deepest memory of the land. An older adult may have less speed, but may have seen more seasons fail, more injuries heal, more conflicts rise and settle, more births, more losses, and more changes in the group's movement. These experiences do not make the older body magically wise. Age does not guarantee good judgment, but time gives the possibility of comparison. A body that has lived through many cycles can sometimes notice when the present begins to resemble something from the past. In the deep human beginning, before records, that ability may have mattered in quiet ways. A dry wind, a change in animal movement, a certain silence near water, a familiar sickness, a tension between families, or a tool shape remembered from earlier use could become meaningful because someone had seen something like it before. The body may have aged, but the stored pattern could still remain. This is the kind of value that is easy to miss if we measure life only by speed, strength, and reproduction. Human survival was never only a race of bodies. It was also a slow carrying of patterns across time. That carrying began with the helpless child, but it continued through the adult who taught, the elder who remembered, and the group that listened, ignored, corrected, or adapted. The chain was never perfect. The past was full of loss. Many children did not survive. Many adults were taken by hunger, injury, disease, childbirth, or violence before age could unfold slowly. We should not imagine a peaceful ancient world where every person lived long and was carefully protected. But even in a hard world, the human pattern allowed old age to exist as more than a brief failure. Some bodies lasted, some memories lasted with them. Some forms of care reached backward to the old and forward to the young. This made human time thicker than the time of one body alone. The slowness of growing up and the slowness of growing old formed a kind of human corridor. At one end, the child needed years before it could stand fully inside the group. At the other end, the aging person might remain for years after physical peak had passed. Between them, life became a passage of teaching, working, remembering, and being remembered. That corridor helps explain why humans grow old so slowly compared with many animals. Though it does not close the question, the body itself still matters. Genes, repair, metabolism, reproduction, and disease all matter. But the body lived inside a social world that changed the pressure around it. A creature that must learn for many years cannot be shaped only by urgency. A creature whose young require long care may also become a creature whose older members remain entangled in care. The slow beginning prepared the ground for the slow ending. Human aging, then, is not only the story of cells wearing down, it is also the story of a species that stretched life across generations until the body became a vessel for more than its own survival. The child at the beginning and the elder near the end both show the same ancient fact. Humans became human by living inside time that no single body could hold alone. A large brain did not simply make humans clever. It made human life slower. This is one of the quiet turns in the story of why our aging became so long. A brain that can learn language, tools, relationships, danger, memory, and meaning is not finished quickly. It requires time outside the womb. It requires contact. It requires correction. It requires adults who stay near long enough for the young to copy them badly, then better, then almost without thinking. In many animals, the young are pushed toward usefulness by speed. In humans, usefulness is delayed because the mind has so much to assemble. The child must learn the world not only as a landscape of food and danger, but as a human world filled with signals. A face can warn. A gesture can invite. A silence can mean threat. A tool can carry knowledge from a hand that is no longer present. A fire can change the night. A remembered place can become safer than an unknown one. None of this enters the child all at once. The human brain grows into life through repeated social experience, and this long growth changed the value of long-lived bodies. If a species depends on instinct alone, the older generation may matter less once reproduction is complete. But if a species depends heavily on learned knowledge, then the older generation can remain part of survival in ways that are not visible through strength alone. This is why the brain must be placed at the center of the question, but carefully. It would be too simple to say humans grow old slowly because our brains are large. Large brains are expensive. They need energy. They create long childhoods. They can make birth and care more difficult. They do not automatically guarantee long life. The deeper point is that a large learning brain helped pull humans into a slower life history. A long childhood became necessary because the child had too much to learn. A long adult life became useful because the learned world had to be carried, repeated, and passed forward. Human aging sits inside that long exchange. Before writing, the brain was the archive. Before libraries, the old body could be a moving record of weather, pain, hunger, healing, conflict, and return. The earliest human groups did not have notebooks of safe plants, maps of seasonal routes, or written rules for raising children. They had bodies that remembered. They had older eyes that had watched many attempts fail. They had hands that had shaped things before. They had voices that could repeat warnings, names, and stories in simple forms. We must not imagine this too perfectly. Memory can be wrong. Age can bring confusion as well as knowledge. Not every older person could guide others. Not every group listened. But the possibility itself matters. In a species built around social learning, information can remain valuable after physical peak has passed. The human brain also changed the relationship between generations. A child with a long-developing mind needs more than food. It needs someone to show what cannot be discovered safely alone. A young human could not test every plant, every path, every animal, every social mistake, and every tool shape from the beginning. Too many mistakes would be costly. Learning from others reduced that cost. The older the living chain became, the more chances there were for useful patterns to survive beyond one individual's direct experience. This is where slow aging begins to look connected to the slow growth of the mind. Humans became animals whose survival depended on time stored inside other people. The body had to last long enough not only to reproduce, but to participate in the transmission of a complicated life. Strength remained important, speed remained important, reproduction remained important, but they were no longer the whole story. A person could move beyond youth and still hold something the group could use. In the deep beginning of humanity, this may have made long life less wasteful than it appears in a harsher, faster biological bargain. The brain made childhood longer, and long childhood made social memory more important. Social memory made older bodies harder to dismiss as useless. Slowly, without any plan, human life stretched. The old face at the edge of the group was not only a sign of decline, it was also a sign that one body had carried the world long enough for the world to leave marks inside it. And those marks, fragile as they were, may have helped make human time longer than the time of muscle alone. A large brain changes the body's relationship with time, because it makes survival depend on what cannot be born ready-made. A young human does not arrive with a complete map of the world inside the body. It arrives with openness. That openness is powerful, but it is also dangerous. It means the child must learn slowly from people who already know something about the land, the group, the tools, the food, and the hidden risks of being alive. A body built for this kind of learning cannot be measured only by how fast it reaches adult size. It must be measured by how long it takes to become competent inside a human world. This is where the human brain begins to reshape aging from the beginning. The brain asks for years. Years ask for care. Care asks for adults who remain present. Presence asks for overlapping lives. Once many lives overlap, age can carry more meaning than decline alone. In the earliest human settings, a child could not safely discover everything through trial and error. Some errors would be too costly. The wrong plant, the wrong path, the wrong animal, the wrong season, the wrong gesture toward another person, the wrong distance from fire or water could change survival. Learning from others softened that danger. A child could inherit caution before suffering the full cost of ignorance. This kind of inheritance did not require written language. It required attention. It required repeated behavior. It required living examples. The older body, even when no longer at peak strength, could remain one of those examples. A person who had lived through many changes might not need to outrun danger to recognize it. A person who had watched tools break might know how a hand should adjust. A person who had seen children grow might know when fear should be answered with firmness and when it should be answered with calm. These are not claims about every ancient person. They are cautious reflections on the kind of social learning humans are known for. The point is not that old age was always honored. The point is that a learning species gives time a place to work. The human brain also made the social world deeper. Animals can have social lives, and some are highly intelligent, but human children enter a social environment filled with layered signals. They must learn who belongs, who can be trusted, who is angry, who is grieving, who has authority, who needs help, and when silence matters more than speech. This learning is slow because human groups are not just collections of bodies. They are webs of memory and expectation. A large brain allows those webs to exist, but it also makes each child dependent on them. Long before formal history, human beings were already living in a world where the past shaped the present through memory. A path taken last season, a conflict remembered from earlier days, a death that changed the group, a place avoided because something once happened there. All of these could guide behavior. When a species lives this way, older bodies may become quiet bridges between times. They connect what happened before with what the young have not yet seen. This does not remove the biological reality of aging. The brain itself can weaken, memory can fade, judgment can become uncertain. Old age is not only wisdom, it is also loss. But the human mystery is that loss often arrives gradually. The body does not always vanish when its strongest years pass. Many functions remain, many habits remain, many relationships remain. This slow fading creates a long zone where decline and contribution can exist together. That zone is rare in a world where many animals face immediate pressure once their bodies weaken. Humans did not escape that pressure completely, but their social life changed its shape. Shared food, protection, fire, shelter, and learned cooperation gave some aging bodies more time than raw exposure might have allowed. The large brain helped create that social shelter because it made cooperation, memory, and instruction central to survival. In this sense, the brain did not give humans long life as a simple reward. It made human life expensive, slow, and dependent. It made childhood longer, adulthood more socially loaded, and old age more connected to the group's memory. The cost was heavy. The young needed years of care. The old sometimes needed care again. But between those needs, knowledge could pass through living bodies. The slow human brain stretched the beginning of life, and that stretched beginning helped make a stretched ending possible. Human beings grew old slowly, not because the body was free from nature, but because the mind had pulled the body into a longer human rhythm of learning, remembering, and remaining. A large brain also changes what it means to be useful after youth. In a faster animal life, usefulness may be strongly tied to strength, fertility, speed, territory, or immediate competition. When those powers fade, the body can lose its place quickly. Human life did not escape those pressures, but it added other forms of value around them. A person could become slower and still remember. A person could become weaker and still recognize. A person could no longer carry the heaviest burden and still help another hand learn how to carry it. This matters because the human brain made survival depend on more than the present moment. It made survival depend on stored experience. Stored experience is different from muscle. Muscle belongs mostly to the body that uses it. Experience can move outward. It can be shown, repeated, corrected, warned, and quietly passed into another person before the first body disappears. This is one of the deep reasons the human aging pattern feels so different from many animal lives. The older body may decline, but what it has carried can sometimes leave the body before death. Long before writing, before schools, before temples, before any formal record of the past, human beings were already living inside a kind of moving memory. The group remembered through people. A place where water appeared after dry months could be held in speech or gesture. A dangerous animal's movement could be recognized before a child understood it. A tool-making mistake could be corrected by someone who had made the same mistake long before. A social wound inside the group could be handled by people who had seen anger rise and settle many times. None of this should be made too perfect. Older people can be mistaken. Younger people can discover new solutions. Memory can preserve fear as well as wisdom, but the larger pattern is clear enough to matter. A species with a long-learning brain gives long-lived individuals a possible role beyond physical peak. The brain did not make old age gentle. It made old age connected. That connection may be one of the quiet foundations beneath the slow human life. To see this more clearly, return to the beginning of humanity, before the earth held cities or written laws. Imagine not a dramatic scene, but an ordinary landscape of survival. A small group near trees, stone, water, fire, children, tools, weather, and tracks in the ground. In that world, no single body could know everything. The young could not know enough yet. The strongest adults could not be everywhere. The group needed memory distributed across different ages. Some people held the urgency of labor. Some held the risk of childbirth and feeding. Some held the restless learning of childhood. Some, if they lived long enough, held longer memory. This distribution of time is part of what makes human life unusual. The human body was not valuable only as an isolated machine. It was part of a system of minds and needs. A large brain made that system possible, but it also made the system necessary. Because the brain needed long development, the child depended. Because the child depended, adults had to cooperate. Because cooperation depended on memory and trust, older experience could sometimes remain relevant. Because older experience remained relevant, a slower decline could fit inside the human pattern more easily than it might in a life ruled only by immediate strength. This is not a single clean cause. It is a chain of pressures, each one touching the next. Large brains, long childhoods, shared care, social learning, cultural memory, and aging bodies all belong to the same slow arrangement. The important point is not that humans were chosen to live long because they were wise. That would be too simple and too flattering. The colder truth is that human beings became so dependent on learning that time itself became useful. Once time became useful, bodies that carried more time could sometimes matter even as they faded. The slow brain pulled the species away from a purely urgent life. It made survival more patient, more expensive, and more collective. It stretched the beginning of life so that a child could learn enough to become human. It stretched the middle of life so that adults could carry and repeat what they had learned. It allowed the ending of life to become gradual, not always because age was protected perfectly, but because the human world had become a place where decline did not instantly erase all value. So the brain does not give us the final answer. It gives us a doorway. Behind that doorway is a species whose bodies grew old slowly because their minds had made life too deep to be lived quickly. Strength is easy to see, so it is easy to overvalue. A fast body crossing open ground, a strong arm lifting weight, a sharp eye noticing movement, a young adult enduring hunger and distance. These are visible forms of survival. In many animal lives, visible power can decide the next moment. Speed can prevent death. Strength can win access to food or mates. Quick reaction can keep the body alive long enough to reproduce. If we judge nature only by these obvious powers, then old age looks like pure loss. The slower body seems to have less to offer. The weaker body seems to fall behind the logic of survival. But human life did not grow only around what could be seen at once. This is where the question of slow aging begins to deepen. Humans became animals whose most important resources were often hidden inside memory, skill, timing, and relationship. These resources do not always disappear when the muscles soften. They can remain after speed declines. They can even become clearer after many years of repeated experience. In the deep beginning of human life, a body was never just a body moving through land. It was also a storehouse of learned patterns. A person who had lived through many seasons might remember where water had returned after dryness. A person who had seen many injuries might recognize what kinds of wounds were survivable. A person who had watched children grow might understand how fear, hunger, or conflict moved through the young. These forms of knowledge were quiet. They did not shine like physical strength. They did not always decide survival in one dramatic moment. But they could shape many small decisions, and many small decisions could matter across a long human life. This is why older bodies may have held a special kind of value in human groups, not because age made them magically wise, but because time gave them more chances to notice repetition. The land repeats in imperfect ways. Weather returns in cycles that are never exactly the same. Animals move through familiar patterns, then change. Food appears, disappears, and returns. People argue, reconcile, form bonds, break trust, and need care. A young body may have energy, but energy alone does not contain comparison. An older body may have seen enough to compare one season with another, one sickness with another, one mistake with an earlier mistake. That ability is not strength, but it is not nothing. It belongs to the slow human world, where survival was not only a matter of force, but of recognition. This does not mean every older person in the ancient past was protected, listened to, or able to help. We should be careful. The deep past gives us fragments, not complete scenes. Age could bring pain, confusion, hunger, and dependence. An older person could become a heavy burden in times of scarcity. Some groups may have treated weakness harshly. Yet the human pattern still allowed a possibility that many faster animal lives do not allow for long. Physical decline could overlap with social usefulness. A body could lose some power without losing every place in the group. That overlap is one of the quiet keys to slow human aging. Among humans, the value of a person could be spread across many functions. A strong adult might hunt, carry, defend, travel, or build. An older adult might advise, remember, prepare, watch children, teach tool use, settle tension, identify danger, or preserve stories of what had happened before. Not every role existed everywhere in the same way, and we should not pretend to know the exact life of every ancient community, but we can say that human survival relied heavily on learned behavior and shared knowledge. In such a species, the body after peak strength was not automatically empty. This matters because evolution does not need perfection. It does not need every older person to be useful every day. It only needs patterns that, often enough, help descendants survive. If longer-lived adults helped children, supported parents, carried knowledge, or stabilized groups in some conditions, then slow decline could become less wasteful than it first appears. The hidden power of older bodies was not the power to outrun the young. It was the power of remaining connected to time. A slowly aging human could hold traces of older landscapes inside a present body. Before writing, that was one way the past stayed alive. And in a species where the past could help the future, old age became more than a fading light. It became a difficult, costly, fragile bridge between what had been survived and what still had to be learned. Knowledge does not always look powerful while it is being used. It can look like hesitation before entering a valley, or a quiet choice to move toward a different stand of trees, or a warning given before a child touches something bright and unfamiliar. In human life, this kind of knowledge could matter because our survival was never only a contest of strength. It was also a contest of memory against uncertainty. A young body may have speed, hunger, and courage, but it may not yet know which courage is useful and which courage is costly. An older body may move more slowly, but it may carry the memory of earlier mistakes. That difference matters in a species where mistakes can be inherited without being repeated. A child does not have to eat every dangerous plant to learn caution. A young adult does not have to enter every risky place to understand fear. If someone else has lived long enough to remember the cost, the group can sometimes avoid paying it again. This is one of the quiet ways old age may have remained useful after physical strength had begun to narrow. It was not a clean exchange. The older body still needed food. It still felt pain. It still became tired. It could still be wrong, but the presence of memory changed the meaning of decline. The human body was not only fading, it was carrying information through the fading. Near the beginning of humanity, before written signs could hold warnings outside the body, the living person was one of the only places where the past could stay. A tool shape that worked better. A campsite that flooded after rain. A season when certain animals changed their movement. A bitter food that caused sickness. A conflict that divided people. A wound that healed badly. These things could survive as remembered patterns. They were not perfect records. Human memory is never perfect. It bends, forgets, and reshapes. Yet, even imperfect memory can be useful when the world itself repeats imperfectly. This is why older experience may have mattered most, not as certainty, but as comparison. The old body had been present before. It had watched enough beginnings to sense when one beginning resembled another. In many animal lives, the ability to act quickly may matter more than the ability to compare across long stretches of time. In human life, both mattered, but comparison became unusually important. A group that could remember yesterday might survive today. A group that could remember many seasons might make different choices about tomorrow. This kind of memory was not only environmental, it was also social. Humans were never just bodies looking for food. They were bodies living among other bodies, with trust, rivalry, affection, anger, fear, and obligation. An older person might remember which families had once shared food, which quarrels had once turned dangerous, which child had always been bold, which adult became reckless when hungry, which promise had been broken, and which silence meant grief rather than peace. These details may seem small, but small social knowledge can hold a group together. For a creature as dependent as a human child and as cooperative as a human adult, the group itself was part of the survival environment. To understand rivers, animals, and weather was not enough. One also had to understand people. Age could deepen that understanding. Though it did not guarantee kindness or wisdom, this careful distinction matters. Old age should not be turned into a romantic symbol. It can bring confusion, rigidity, fear, and suffering. Some older people may have held harmful memories as well as useful ones. Some may have resisted change when change was needed. Slow aging was not a simple blessing. It was a complicated condition where loss and value could exist at the same time. That complication is exactly what makes human old age so important to this question. If age were only loss, a long, slow decline would be difficult to explain. If age were only wisdom, the explanation would be too easy and too flattering. The reality sits between those two extremes. Older bodies could be costly, vulnerable, and dependent, while also carrying parts of the group's past. Human evolution often works in such mixed spaces, where a trait is not perfect, but useful enough within a wider pattern. The hidden power of older bodies was therefore not a heroic power. It was quieter than that. It was the power of continuity, the power of not beginning from nothing every morning, the power of letting the young enter a world already marked by memory. In that sense, human aging slowed down, because human life itself had become a long conversation between what the body could still do and what the body had already learned. The old person did not stand outside survival. Sometimes, even while fading, that person helped survival remember itself. The hidden power of older bodies becomes clearer when we stop looking for one dramatic use and begin looking at many quiet uses gathered together. A human group did not survive only through rare moments of danger. It survived through repeated ordinary decisions: where to sleep, when to move, how much food to share, which child needed watching, which sound in the dark mattered, which injury could wait, which conflict needed calming before it widened. In these repeated decisions, the older body could still belong to survival, even if it no longer carried the strongest load. This is different from thinking of age as a throne of wisdom. It is more modest and more realistic. Age may offer memory, but memory is uneven. Age may offer judgment, but judgment can fail. Age may offer calm, but not always. Still, in a species that learns socially, even uneven memory can have value. A single remembered drought, a single remembered sickness, a single remembered mistake, with food or fire or travel, could change how the group responded when the pattern returned. The body that carried that memory might be slower than before, but slowness did not erase what had been lived. This helps explain why human aging could become gradual rather than immediately final. The aging person remained inside a network where usefulness was spread across more than one kind of ability. Strength was one ability. Fertility was one ability. Speed was one ability. But care, recognition, teaching, warning, and social memory were also abilities, and they did not all vanish at the same time. Human decline is layered. The body may lose endurance before it loses speech. It may lose speed before it loses skill. It may lose strength before it loses the ability to notice a child's fear, or remember a place, or repeat a method with patient hands. That layered decline created a long zone between full strength and complete helplessness. In many animals, the outside world may narrow that zone quickly. Predators, hunger, competition, or exposure can remove a weakened body before old age becomes a long visible state. Among humans, the group could sometimes widen that zone. A shared shelter, a guarded fire, stored knowledge, divided labor, and the presence of others could let a person remain alive, while abilities changed slowly. Near the origin of our species, this did not mean safety. It meant partial shelter inside danger. It meant that weakness could sometimes be carried long enough for other forms of value to remain. The most important thing is that older bodies may have helped the young without needing to be central every day. A child does not only need food. A child needs attention. A child needs someone to notice wandering feet, unsafe hands, fear, hunger, fatigue, and imitation. In a group where mothers and strong adults had many demands, any extra attention could matter. An older person who could watch, hold, guide, warn, or calm a child might help free another adult for gathering, making, traveling, or recovering. This idea must be handled carefully, because we cannot describe every ancient group as if we had seen it, but it fits the broader human pattern of cooperative care. Human children were too dependent for care to be simple. Their long immaturity created pressure on the whole group. In that setting, older people could sometimes contribute not by replacing younger adults, but by supporting the slow growth of the next generation. That is a different kind of survival power. It works quietly, through time. It does not look like a chase or a fight. It looks like continuity. It looks like the same warning repeated until a child remembers it. It looks like a practiced hand correcting a clumsy one. It looks like someone who has seen enough loss to recognize when care is needed before words appear. Slow human aging may have been possible because human value itself became slow. A body did not have to be at its peak to remain woven into the lives around it. This does not remove the pain of age. It does not make old age easy, pure, or automatically respected. It simply shows why the human body could fade in stages inside a social world that had uses for more than force. The older body was not only a remainder after youth, it was sometimes a bridge between remembered danger and present choice, between adult labor and child dependence, between the body's decline and the group's need to remember. And this bridge may be one reason humans grow old so slowly, not as an exception to nature, but as one of nature's strangest ways of making time useful. One of the most careful ideas about slow human aging begins with a simple observation. Human children are costly for a long time, and mothers cannot easily carry that cost alone. A child needs food, protection, warmth, attention, and years of guidance. Another child may arrive before the first one can live independently. A mother's body has limits. Her time has limits. Her energy has limits. In such a life, help from others can change the chances of the young. This is where older women become especially important in many discussions of human evolution. The idea is often called the grandmother hypothesis, but it should be treated with care. It is not a complete answer to human aging. It is not a proven story about every ancient group. It is one serious way researchers have tried to explain why humans, especially women, can live for many years after reproduction has ended. The core idea is quiet, not dramatic. If an older woman could help feed, protect, guide, or support grandchildren, then her life might still increase the survival of her descendants, even without more children of her own. In that view, old age would not be empty time. It would be time redirected toward the next generation. This matters because evolution does not only work through direct reproduction, it can also work through kin, through relatives who share parts of the same inherited line. A grandmother helping a grandchild survive may still be helping her own biological legacy continue, but the real human picture is broader than biology alone. In early human groups, care was probably not carried by one person in isolation. Fathers, older siblings, aunts, uncles, unrelated allies, and other group members could all matter in different conditions. Human childhood was too long and too demanding to be explained by a single caretaker. The grandmother idea is powerful because it points to a larger truth. Human generations became interwoven. The young needed more than parents. Adults needed support. Older people could sometimes remain useful by easing the burden of care. Near the beginning of humanity, this could have had deep consequences. Imagine a small group moving through a landscape where food is scattered, weather changes, and children cannot keep pace with adults. The group does not only need strong hunters or fast walkers. It also needs someone to watch a child near the fire, someone to share gathered food, someone to remember which foods can be given safely, someone to calm a frightened young body, someone to free a mother's hands for another task. These roles are ordinary, but ordinary roles can shape survival over many generations. A child who receives enough food and attention is more likely to live. A mother who receives help may recover, gather, nurse, travel, or care for another child more effectively. A group with more layers of care may carry more dependent young through hard seasons. This does not mean older women were always protected, or that grandmothers always existed in every child's life. Many people died before reaching old age. Many lives were cut short. But where older women did survive, their presence could create a different structure of time. The life of one generation could support the life of the next, not only through birth, but through continued care. That structure helps us understand why human old age may have remained connected to survival. It was not only about the old person as an individual, it was about the way that person's remaining years could be folded back into the group. The slow-aging body became part of a larger household of needs. Its value could appear in small acts repeated over years, carrying knowledge of food, watching children, sharing memory, reducing risk, and helping the young cross the long, helpless beginning of human life. This is also why human aging cannot be reduced to a simple story of decline. Decline was real. Menopause, frailty, fatigue, pain, and dependence all belong to the difficult side of age. But in humans, the end of reproduction did not always mean the end of contribution. A body could stop producing new children and still help existing children survive. A life could shift from making descendants directly to protecting descendants already born. In that shift, human time became unusual. The body was no longer useful only while it was fertile or strongest. It could remain part of the future by caring for those who had not yet become strong. This is not a final answer to why humans grow old so slowly, but it opens an important doorway. It shows that long life may have been tied to the slow needs of children, the heavy cost of mothers, and the quiet power of care moving across generations. Human old age, in this view, was not simply the body staying too long. It was the body remaining inside the unfinished work of the young. The grandmother idea becomes more powerful when we place it beside the slow helplessness of human children. A child who needs many years of care changes the entire shape of a group. It means reproduction is not finished at birth. Birth is only the beginning of a long investment. A newborn must be fed, carried, warmed, watched, and protected. Later, the same child must be guided through movement, speech, food, danger, tools, emotion, and social rules. This long dependence means that survival is not only a question of how many children are born, it is also a question of how many children are carried safely through the years before they can truly help themselves. In many animals, the young become independent sooner, or the parents produce many offspring with only a small chance that each one will survive. Humans followed another path. Human children were fewer, slower, and more expensive. That made every living child a deep commitment. In such a world, an older woman who could help did not need to produce another child to matter. She could increase the chances that children already born would live. This is the quiet logic behind the grandmother hypothesis. It does not claim that old age is easy. It does not say every grandmother was cared for or that every child had one. It says that, under some conditions, the survival of descendants could be supported by older women whose own reproduction had ended. This helps explain one of the strangest parts of human life, the long period many women can live after fertility declines. In most mammals, reproductive life and bodily life are more closely tied together. Humans are unusual because female life can continue for many years after childbirth is no longer possible. There are other animals with post-reproductive life, and this should not be described as uniquely human in an absolute way. But in humans, this period became deeply woven into family, care, memory, and social life. The question is not only why the body remains alive, the question is what remaining alive could still do inside a slow-learning species. Near the beginning of human life, before settled villages and written names, a grandmother's contribution would not have needed to look dramatic. It could have been food, gathered and shared. It could have been a child watched while a mother rested or worked. It could have been knowledge of roots, shellfish, fruiting trees, water places, safe handling of fire, or the timing of movement through land. It could have been social memory, who needed care, who could be trusted, which conflict was dangerous, which child was ill, which mother was exhausted. None of these acts need to be imagined as perfect or universal. The deep past does not allow that certainty, but they fit the broader human pattern of cooperative care. Human beings did not raise children as isolated bodies. The young were too dependent, and the world was too demanding. Care had to spread outward. Once care spreads outward, older bodies can become part of the reproductive success of others. This is a different way of seeing aging. The older woman's body may no longer be making new life directly, but it may still be helping new life continue. That shift changes the meaning of slow decline. Weakness and usefulness can overlap. Fatigue and memory can overlap. Loss and care can overlap. A grandmother may need help in some ways while giving help in others. This mixed condition is very human. It refuses a simple division between useful youth and useless age. It shows how survival can move through relationships rather than through one body alone. The grandmother idea also reminds us that human generations do not stand separately. They lean into one another. Children lean on adults. Mothers lean on helpers. Helpers lean on memory. Older people may lean on the group, while the group may lean on what older people still know or still do. In this layered arrangement, long life becomes less mysterious. It is still costly, but the cost may be balanced by forms of care that work slowly across years. Human aging did not have to be a perfect advantage to persist. It only had to fit often enough within a life system where children needed time, mothers needed support, and memory could make survival less blind. This is why the question of slow human aging leads us toward family, not as a modern ideal, but as an ancient structure of dependence. A body growing old slowly may seem like one individual fading, but in the human story, that fading body could still be tied to a child not yet ready, a mother not yet rested, and a group not yet finished carrying its future forward. Care across generations changes the meaning of age because it makes survival wider than the body that gives birth. A child is born from one body, but it is kept alive by many forms of attention. Someone must notice hunger. Someone must notice cold. Someone must notice danger before the child understands danger. Someone must repeat what the child cannot yet remember. In human life, the future does not move forward by birth alone. It has to be carried. This is why the presence of older people, especially older women in many evolutionary discussions, becomes so important to the question of slow aging. Their value does not need to appear as force. It can appear as the reduction of pressure on others. A mother who receives help may have more energy. A child who receives more attention may avoid more risks. A group that contains older memory may not need to relearn every danger through fresh loss. These effects are quiet, but evolution often works through quiet effects repeated many times. The grandmother hypothesis points toward this deeper pattern. It suggests that life after reproduction could still support reproduction indirectly by helping descendants survive. Yet it should not be treated as the whole answer. Human aging is not explained by one role, one sex, one relationship, or one behavior. Older men could also carry knowledge, teach skills, help defend, make tools, watch children, or support the group in other ways. Non-kin relationships could matter. Cooperation could extend beyond bloodlines. Human groups were flexible, and our deep past was not one uniform scene. The safer conclusion is broader. Human old age became possible inside a species where survival was distributed across relationships. The body did not have to do everything alone. Near the origin of our species, this distribution would have mattered because the human child was so slow to become independent. A young animal that can quickly follow, hide, feed, or flee places less long-term weight on others. A human child places years of weight on others. That weight is not only physical, it is emotional, social, and informational. The child must learn what to fear, what to eat, whom to trust, how to use hands, how to listen, how to wait, how to join the life of the group. Older people, when present and capable, could become part of that long process. They could help turn raw childhood into human competence. This does not mean old age was always honoured. It does not mean every older person had a secure place. Hunger can make care difficult. Movement can make weakness dangerous. Illness can overwhelm affection. Ancient life could be severe, but the human pattern allowed age to remain inside the circle of need and response. An older person might receive food in one moment and give knowledge in another, might need help walking, yet help a child learn, might be slower on the path, yet remember why the group should not take a different path. This mixed exchange is central to human aging. Slow decline creates time for roles to change gradually instead of ending suddenly. The older body can pass from strength to support, from direct production to indirect care, from central labour to memory, attention, and presence. That gradual shift is one of the differences between human aging and the shorter visible aging of many animals. In a world where usefulness is narrow, decline quickly becomes exclusion. In a world where usefulness is layered, decline can coexist with contribution. Human beings became layered animals. We lived in bodies, but also in relationships. We reproduced children, but also reproduced skills. We survived seasons, but also remembered them. We faced danger, but also taught danger before it arrived. This is why the care of grandchildren is more than a family detail. It reveals a larger structure of time. The young are unfinished. The old are changing. The adult group stands between them, but not alone. Every generation touches another generation. The newborn pulls care from the present. The elder brings traces of the past into the present. Together, they make human life stretch beyond the sharp edge of immediate strength. Slow aging may have persisted because in humans, the later years could still lean toward the future. Not always, not perfectly, not without cost, but often enough to make the fading body part of a living chain. And once care, memory, and dependence became woven together, human old age was no longer simply a delay before death. It became one more way the species carried its young across time. Human aging becomes visible because the body does not usually fail all at once. It changes in layers. Strength may soften before language disappears. Endurance may narrow before memory is lost. Fertility may decline, while care, recognition, habit, and social presence remain. This layered decline is one of the most important differences between human old age and a shorter, sharper ending. In many animals, the outside world may remove a weakened body quickly. A slower body may not escape danger. A tired body may not find food. A wounded body may not keep its place. In such conditions, aging can be hidden by early death. The animal may not live long enough for old age to become a long visible state. Humans did not escape injury, hunger, cold, disease, or danger, especially near the beginning of our species. But human life created partial shelters around the body: fire, shared food, group attention, tools, sleeping places, and learned cooperation could sometimes keep a weaker person within the living circle. These shelters were never perfect. They did not remove the cold pressures of nature. They only changed how directly those pressures struck the aging body. That change matters. If a body is protected just enough, old age has time to appear. The joints can stiffen slowly, the skin can change slowly, the walk can shorten slowly. The body can become less powerful without vanishing immediately from the group. This is why human old age feels like a long landscape rather than a sudden cliff. It is a sequence of losses, but not all losses arrive together. A person may stop running far, but still walk, may stop carrying heavy weight, but still prepare food, may lose some sharpness of vision, but still recognize faces, voices, seasons, and familiar places, may need more rest, but still offer attention to a child. This gradualness is not outside biology. It is biology unfolding inside a social world. The human body, like all animal bodies, accumulates damage. Cells repair themselves imperfectly, tissues change, hormones shift. Immune responses alter with age. Bones, muscles, blood vessels, teeth and organs all follow their own slow histories. But in humans, these bodily changes often unfold across years while the person remains socially present. That is the key. Aging is not only what happens inside cells, it is also what the surrounding world allows the aging body to continue doing. Near the origin of humanity, this surrounding world was made of other people and practical habits, not modern medicine. A person with weaker legs might survive longer if the group moved differently, shared food, or allowed that person to remain near shelter. A person with worn teeth might survive longer if food was softened, cooked, processed, or shared. A person recovering from injury might survive longer if others waited, helped, or guarded. We should be cautious here. Archaeology gives fragments, not full biographies. We cannot claim every injured or aging person was cared for, but healed bones and signs of survival after serious injury in ancient human relatives and early humans suggest that care and tolerance of weakness were not foreign to our lineage. This matters because visible old age requires time after weakness begins. Without some protection, weakness can end life before aging has a chance to become slow. Human aging also became visible because our bodies are not organized around one single function ending at one single moment. Reproduction matters, but human life continues through many forms of contribution. A person may pass beyond reproductive years and still participate in care, memory, teaching, social stability, and the raising of younger kin. A person may decline physically while still carrying language, emotional bonds, and knowledge. This layered usefulness mirrors the layered decline of the body. One ability fades, another remains. One role becomes harder, another becomes possible. In a species where survival depends on many kinds of work, the aging body does not have to become irrelevant at the first sign of loss. This is not a comforting fantasy. It is a difficult arrangement. Slow aging can mean years of pain, dependence, grief, and reduced freedom. It can place burdens on others. It can reveal how fragile the body has always been. But it also reveals something unusual about the human path. Our bodies were allowed, at least sometimes, to show the slow story of decline because our social world could hold decline for longer than raw exposure would. Humans grow old slowly not because aging is gentle and not because the body is safe from damage, but because human life made room for gradual loss to remain visible, connected, and unfinished. The slow visibility of human aging also comes from the way different parts of the body follow different clocks. The body is not one candle burning down evenly. It is more like a landscape changing under many seasons at once. Muscle may lose some power while language remains clear. Skin may thin while memory still carries familiar paths. Hearing may soften while the hand still knows a movement learned decades before. Fertility may decline while the ability to care, notice, teach, and remember continues. This unevenness makes human old age long and recognizable. It creates a wide space between the first signs of decline and the final end of life. In many animals, that space may be shortened by the outside world. A creature that loses speed may lose food. A creature that loses strength may lose safety. A creature that cannot compete may disappear before its inner aging becomes obvious. But humans lived inside groups that could sometimes reduce the punishment of a weaker body. A person did not always have to face cold, hunger, injury, or danger alone. That difference did not make aging easy. It allowed aging to unfold slowly among other people. Near the beginning of human life, this would have mattered in practical ways. An older person with worn teeth might still eat if food was cooked, softened, or shared. A person with reduced speed might still remain near a protected sleeping place. A person whose strength had faded might still work with lighter tasks, watch children, remember methods, or give warnings. These possibilities depend on context and they should not be overstated. Ancient life was harsh, and many people did not reach old age, but the human pattern gave decline more room than isolation would have given. This is why the social environment is part of the biology of aging. The body ages through cells, tissues, organs, repair and damage. Yet the meaning of that aging changes depending on whether the world around the body allows continued life. A weak leg in a solitary animal may quickly become fatal. A weak leg in a human group may still be dangerous, but not always final. Human aging is not only a process of becoming old, it is a process of remaining alive while becoming old. That remaining creates the long human experience we recognize as aging. It lets the face change across years. It lets habits survive after strength fades. It lets memory and weakness occupy the same body. It lets a person become gradually more dependent without immediately losing every role. The deep human past probably contained many mixed states. Someone could be tired but still observant, slow but still skilled, less fertile but still caring, less forceful but still socially important. This mixture is one reason old age became a visible human condition. Human life had enough layers for loss to arrive in layers too. The beginning of humanity was not a place where age had no cost. It was a place where cost could sometimes be shared. Fire could change what teeth had to do. Tools could change what hands could do. Shelter could change what weather did to the weak. Group memory could change what danger did to the inexperienced. Care could change what injury did to the future of a body. None of these things removed mortality. They only softened the directness of it. But softening directness is enough to create time, and time is what aging needs in order to become slow. This may be one of the coldest truths inside the human story. We did not grow old slowly because the body was protected from damage. We grew old slowly because, in certain human conditions, damage did not always end the story immediately. The body could continue while losing pieces of itself. The group could continue while carrying some of that loss. Human old age became visible because human survival learned how to delay some endings without defeating the ending itself. That delay is fragile, costly, dependent on others, and still one of the oldest signs that human beings became animals whose lives were held not only by flesh, but by shared time. Human old age becomes most visible in the long space between weakening and disappearance. That space is not empty. It is filled with small adjustments. A person walks less far, but still walks, carries less weight, but still handles familiar objects, sleeps more lightly, but still listens for the movement of children, forgets some things, but still remembers others with surprising clarity. This uneven fading is one reason human aging feels so long compared with the lives of many animals. The body does not close like a door. It becomes a house where some rooms grow quiet before others. In one place there is pain. In another, habit remains. In one place there is fatigue. In another, recognition remains. In one place there is loss. In another, attachment remains. This layered condition allowed human old age to become a lived period, not only a final event. In a harsher, more solitary existence, the first serious weakness might quickly become the last weakness. But humans often lived surrounded by other bodies, other hands, other eyes, other memories. That surrounding could delay the final consequence of decline. It could let aging continue long enough to become visible as aging. Near the beginning of human life, this must have depended on ordinary things rather than miracles. A shared fire could reduce the danger of cold. Cooked or processed food could reduce the demand placed on teeth. Tools could let weaker hands still perform useful movements. Group defense could reduce exposure to predators. Companions could notice illness, injury, confusion, or exhaustion. None of this made ancient life safe. None of it guaranteed protection for every aging person, but it created a human environment where decline did not always meet nature directly. Between the weakening body and the outside world, there could be a layer of care, skill, habit, and social patience. That layer is one of the reasons old age became stretched. It gave the body time to show gradual change. It let weakness become a process instead of an immediate sentence. The biology of aging remained real underneath it all. Cells still accumulated damage. Tissues still lost resilience. Bones still changed. Muscles still lost mass. Blood vessels, joints, eyes, ears, teeth, and immune responses still followed the slow costs of living. Human culture did not cancel these processes. It only changed how long a person might remain within reach of others while those processes unfolded. This is why human aging is both biological and social at once. The body changes from the inside, but the speed at which those changes remove someone from life depends partly on the world outside the body. A weak body alone and a weak body held inside a group do not face the same future. The weakness may be the same, but the consequences are different. In that difference, slow old age becomes possible. This also helps explain why humans can feel old before they are gone. Many animals may die before age has time to become a long identity. Humans may live for years with the awareness of gradual change. The hand notices less strength, the knees notice distance, the eyes notice dimness, the memory notices missing names, yet the person remains inside relationships, language, place and routine. That remaining is deeply human. It is not simply survival in the narrow sense. It is survival stretched across meaning. An older person may become a witness to younger lives. A grandchild may grow while a grandparent fades. A skill may be passed on while the hand that teaches it trembles. A story may be told by a voice that is already losing breath. This is not sentimental if we look at it carefully. It is a hard arrangement. It contains burden, grief, dependence, and fear. But it also reveals why slow aging could belong to human life. Our species made room for overlap, between strength and weakness, between memory and forgetting, between care given and care received, between the beginning of one life and the ending of another. The slow human body did not avoid decline. It made decline visible inside a social world that could sometimes hold it. That may be why human old age feels so different from a quick ending. It is not only the body failing, it is the body failing slowly enough for life around it to respond. From the first human communities to the long histories that followed, aging became a quiet record of this response. The body loses, the group adjusts, time continues, and the question remains open. Archaeology speaks about old age in a very quiet voice. It does not give us the full sound of an ancient life. It does not tell us how an older person was treated on an ordinary morning, or whether a group listened when an aging voice remembered a dangerous place. The deep past rarely preserves those moments. What it preserves are harder things: bones, teeth, injuries, tools, graves, wear, healing, and traces of places where people lived. These traces are incomplete, but they matter because they remind us that human aging was not only an idea, it left marks on real bodies. A worn tooth, a healed fracture, a damaged joint, or signs of survival after physical stress can tell us that some individuals lived through hardship long enough for the body to record it. This does not prove a gentle world. It does not prove that all older people were protected, but it does show that some human and human-related lives continued after injury, wear, and weakness had already begun. That is important for the question of why humans grow old so slowly. Slow aging needs time, and archaeology sometimes shows us bodies that were given time after damage. In many animal lives, damage can become the end very quickly. A broken limb, a worn tooth, or reduced movement may make feeding, fleeing, or competing impossible. Among humans, and likely among some earlier relatives, survival after serious weakness could sometimes continue because life was not faced alone. The evidence is never as complete as imagination wants it to be, but healed bones are one clear sign that a body endured beyond the moment of injury. Healing takes time. If a person or ancient relative survived long enough for a fracture to mend, that survival may suggest rest, tolerance, reduced pressure, or help from others, depending on the case. We must be careful not to turn every healed bone into a story of kindness. Some injuries heal without much help. Some bodies survive through their own resilience. But in a species with long childhood, shared food, tools, and social living, the possibility of care becomes reasonable. The archaeological silence is not empty. It is a silence with small signals inside it. Near the beginning of humanity, before written records, these signals may be the only way we can glimpse aging bodies within groups. Teeth are especially important because teeth carry the history of food, wear, and survival. A body with heavily worn teeth had lived long enough for eating itself to leave a mark. Worn teeth could make life harder, especially if chewing became painful or inefficient. Yet cooking, processing, sharing, and softer foods may have allowed some people with dental problems to survive longer than they might have in a more isolated condition. Again, this should not be overstated. We cannot know every meal, every hand that helped, or every reason a person survived, but the pattern is meaningful. Human culture changed the relationship between the aging body and the raw environment. The body still wore down, the mouth still suffered, the joints still carried years of movement, but the surrounding life could sometimes soften the consequences. Burials and treatment of the dead also offer cautious clues, though they are difficult to read. A grave may tell us that a body mattered to others after death, but it does not always tell us how that person lived in old age. Such signs can suggest social meaning, yet they cannot prove respect for elders everywhere. The deep past asks for humility. It gives fragments, and we must not force those fragments to speak too loudly. Still, even fragments change the question. They show that human bodies have long carried histories of wear, injury, healing, and continued life. Old age was not invented by modern comfort. The slow human body was already leaving its marks in bone and tooth, in remains of lives that passed through danger and did not always end at the first sign of weakness. Archaeology does not answer the whole mystery. It simply places it on the ground, where some bodies had already become records of time, still asking why the human story allowed fading to last. A bone that has healed is not only a medical fact. In the deep human past, it can become a quiet sign that time continued after damage. Healing requires days, weeks, sometimes much longer, depending on the injury and the body. During that time, a person may have moved less, eaten differently, needed protection, or depended on the tolerance of others. Archaeology cannot always tell us exactly what happened. It cannot show the face of the person who brought food, or the hand that waited, or the group that moved more slowly, but it can show that a body was not immediately removed by injury. That is already meaningful. For many animals, a serious wound can quickly become fatal, not because the body cannot begin to heal, but because the surrounding world does not wait. Hunger continues. Predators continue. Weather continues. Competition continues. A weakened body may be given no time. In human life, some bodies were sometimes given time. That difference is one of the small openings through which slow aging becomes visible. The same idea appears in worn joints, damaged teeth, and skeletal signs of long use. A body that carries heavy wear has lived through repeated motion. It has walked, bent, lifted, chewed, gripped, rested, recovered, and returned to the same demands many times. The marks do not tell us a whole biography, but they tell us that life lasted long enough to leave history inside the body itself. This matters for the question of human old age because aging is not a single event. It is the accumulation of many ordinary uses, many small repairs, and many incomplete recoveries. In an animal that dies quickly after weakness begins, these marks may never gather into a long record. In humans, they often had time to gather. Near the beginning of our species, before written memory, the body was one of the first archives of time. Teeth recorded food. Bones recorded strain. Healed injuries recorded survival after harm. Burial places, when they appear, recorded that the dead body sometimes remained socially meaningful after life was gone. None of this proves a universal story of care. It would be wrong to say every ancient group protected every older person, or that every healed injury means someone was lovingly nursed. The evidence does not allow that certainty. But the evidence does allow a more careful thought. Human life had conditions in which weakness did not always end the story at once. That is enough to separate humans from many lives ruled more directly by exposure. The archaeological record is also silent about feeling. It cannot tell us whether an aging person felt honoured, afraid, lonely, useful, or unwanted. It cannot tell us whether a child learned from an elder's voice on a cold evening. It cannot tell us whether memory was welcomed or ignored. These parts of life disappear almost completely. What remains is harder and slower, the body's material record of having endured. This silence should make the script more honest, not less powerful. The mystery becomes stronger when we do not fill every gap with imagination. We know that human bodies wore down. We know that some survived injuries. We know that food, fire, tools, and group life changed the pressures around the body. We know that human children were slow and dependent, creating a social world where care had to be shared in some form. From these wider facts, old age begins to look less like a modern accident and more like an ancient possibility. A person who lived long enough to carry worn teeth or healed bones had crossed a threshold that many wild bodies never cross for long. The body had become slower, marked, and changed, yet it remained present long enough for time to leave evidence. That presence could have mattered in many ways, through knowledge, through care, through memory, through simple belonging, or through the difficult burden of being carried by others. Archaeology does not choose one meaning for us. It only places the old question in the dust. It shows us that human life has long included bodies that did not vanish at the first injury, the first weakness, or the first sign of wear. Somewhere in those fragments, slow aging becomes more than an idea. It becomes a trace of a species that learned, imperfectly and unevenly, to let some damaged bodies continue inside the group's time. The silence of archaeology is sometimes more honest than a complete story would be. It does not let us hear the voice of an older person. It does not let us know whether a group felt gratitude, impatience, affection, fear, or obligation toward an aging body. It does not tell us which memories were trusted, which were ignored, or which were lost when a person died. But the silence is not empty. It holds fragments of lives that lasted long enough for the body to change. A jaw worn by years of chewing, a spine marked by repeated strain, a bone healed after injury, a joint shaped by long use. These are not dramatic signs. They are quiet evidence that time passed through flesh. For the question of slow human aging, this matters deeply. Old age is time made visible inside the body. If the body dies too soon, aging leaves little trace. If the body survives after wear begins, time has room to write itself into bone, tooth, posture, and damage. Many animals may never reach that long visible stage because the world removes them earlier. Hunger, predators, exposure, infection, and competition can turn weakness into disappearance. Humans faced all of these dangers too, especially near the beginning of our species. But human life also placed bodies inside groups, tools, fire, shared food, and memory. That setting could sometimes make the difference between weakness becoming an end and weakness becoming a longer condition. This is one of the careful lessons from archaeological traces. They do not prove a gentle ancient world. They prove something more modest and perhaps more interesting. Some damaged or worn human bodies remained alive long enough for damage and wear to become records. A healed fracture does not automatically tell us a story of compassion. A worn tooth does not tell us who prepared the food. A burial does not tell us whether an elder was loved while alive. But taken together with what we know about human dependence, these traces fit a species where life was often supported beyond the strength of one individual. A child could not survive alone. An injured adult might need others. An older person with reduced ability might remain present if the group could absorb some cost. This absorption was never guaranteed. It may have failed often. Yet even partial care, repeated across many generations, could widen the space in which aging became visible. The archaeological record also reminds us that old age is not only a biological condition, it is a historical condition. It depends on what kind of world surrounds the body. A worn body in isolation faces one future. A worn body near fire, cooked food, familiar tools, shared shelter, and watchful companions faces another. The cells may age in both cases, but the chance to keep living while aging is not the same. This distinction helps us avoid a simple answer. Humans did not grow old slowly only because their bodies were different inside. They grew old slowly because the outside of the body changed too. Human beings built small buffers against the immediate force of nature. They did this long before modern medicine. They did it with hands, heat, food sharing, knowledge, patience, and the ordinary cooperation needed by dependent young. In that world, some older bodies could stay inside the group's time. They could become witnesses to seasons, carriers of memory, receivers of care, and sometimes givers of care. The traces left behind are incomplete, but their incompleteness is useful. It prevents us from making the past too smooth. It reminds us that slow aging was costly, uneven, and fragile. Some people lived long enough for age to leave marks. Others did not. Some may have been helped. Others may have been abandoned by necessity, fear, scarcity, or movement. The deep past contains both possibilities. Still, the wider pattern remains. Human life created more room than many animal lives for bodies that were no longer at their peak. Archaeology shows that room indirectly, through the hard remains of survival after use, injury, and time. It tells us that the human body has long been a place where history gathered silently. Before writing preserved memory outside the body, aging preserved time inside the body. And in those old bones and worn teeth, the question continues without needing a final answer. What kind of species lets the fading body remain long enough to become evidence of a shared life? Fire changed the human body's relationship with danger, but not by making danger disappear. It softened some of the edges. A cold night was still cold, but fire made warmth more reliable. Raw food could still be difficult, but cooking and processing made some foods easier to chew and digest. Darkness still held risk, but a shared flame could gather bodies into one protected place. These changes may seem simple, yet they matter deeply for the question of slow human aging. Many animals meet the environment directly. Their teeth, muscles, speed, and senses must answer the world almost alone. If the teeth fail, food becomes harder. If speed fades, danger comes closer. If cold overwhelms the body, there may be little buffer. Humans also depended on teeth, strength, speed, and senses, but they slowly added layers between the body and the raw world. Fire was one of the oldest and most powerful of those layers. It did not stop aging. It did not heal the body from decline, but it helped create a human environment where weaker bodies could sometimes continue longer than they might have under direct exposure. Near the beginning of human history, fire was not only a tool, it was a place. It gathered people. It changed the night from pure darkness into a shared circle. Around that circle, food could be prepared, children could be watched, wounds could be noticed, and older bodies could rest with slightly less exposure to cold and fear. This does not mean every early human group used fire in the same way, or that every aging person was protected by it. The evidence of deep time is uneven, and we should not turn fire into a magical answer. But as a general part of human life, controlled fire changed what the body had to endure. A body with worn teeth could benefit from softer cooked food. A tired body could benefit from warmth. A group could stay closer together through the dangerous hours of night. These ordinary changes created time. And time is what slow aging needs. Food is just as important. The human body did not grow old slowly in an empty landscape. It grew old inside a widening system of shared calories, gathered foods, hunted foods, processed foods, and later stored foods in some societies. Long before agriculture, food sharing was already a central part of human social life. A person who could not gather enough every day might still eat if others shared. A child who could not feed itself survived because adults fed it. An injured adult might recover because food reached the body during weakness. An older person might remain present because eating did not depend only on individual strength at every moment. This is a major difference between humans and many animals. In much of nature, weakness quickly becomes hunger. In human life, weakness could sometimes be surrounded by sharing. Again, this was never guaranteed. Hunger was real, scarcity was real. Groups may have made hard choices, but the human pattern allowed food to move from one body to another, and that movement changed the meaning of frailty. Shelter also widened the space for aging. A protected sleeping place, even a temporary one, reduces the direct pressure of weather and predators. Tools reduce the direct demand on bare hands and teeth. Clothing and simple coverings, where they existed, reduced the direct demand on skin and heat regulation. Social attention reduced the direct demand on one person's senses. These things did not make humans separate from nature. They show how humans survived by building small buffers inside nature. The body still aged, but it aged inside a world partly shaped by human action. That is one reason our old age became more visible than the old age of many animals. The environment did not strike every weakness with equal force. Sometimes another person, a tool, a flame, a prepared meal, or a sheltered place stood between weakness and death. The deeper point is that human culture did not simply decorate life. It changed the conditions under which bodies could last. A species with long childhood, shared care, and learned behavior gradually made survival less immediate. The earliest humans did not defeat the environment. They negotiated with it, slowly, imperfectly, through fire, food, shelter, and cooperation. In that negotiation, old age found more room to unfold. The fading body could remain near warmth, receive softened food, stay within a sleeping group, and continue inside a circle of memory and care. Slow human aging may therefore be partly the result of a body living inside a human-made buffer, a fragile space where nature was still powerful, but not always allowed to speak first. Food did more than keep the human body alive for one more day. It changed the relationship between weakness and survival. In many animal lives, feeding is closely tied to the body's own strength, speed, teeth, senses, and access to territory. When those abilities fade, hunger can arrive quickly. A slower animal may reach food too late. A weaker animal may lose access to a feeding place. An animal with damaged teeth may not be able to process what it finds. The environment does not always offer a second method. Humans were never free from hunger, but they slowly built second methods around the body. They cut, pounded, scraped, roasted, boiled in later contexts, softened, carried, divided, and shared. These actions matter because they allowed food to become less dependent on the strongest body in the group. A child could eat because someone prepared food. An injured person could eat because another hand carried it. An older person with worn teeth or reduced strength could sometimes remain nourished because food had already been changed before it reached the mouth. This does not make the ancient world gentle. Scarcity could still decide who lived and who did not. But the human way of handling food created a small distance between biological weakness and immediate death. That distance is one place where slow aging could unfold. Near the beginning of the human story, food was not only calories, it was social movement. It moved from hand to hand, from adult to child, from successful search to waiting body, from fire to mouth, from memory of a season to the present need. This movement made humans different from many animals whose feeding depends more directly on individual success. A body that failed to find food every day did not always fail to eat every day. That simple difference may have mattered deeply. If an older person could still receive food during periods of reduced ability, then the body had more time to decline gradually. If a mother could receive help while caring for children, her own energy burden changed. If children were fed by several people, their long helplessness became more survivable. Food sharing tied generations together in a practical way before it became a moral idea. It was not only kindness, it was part of how a slow species survived. Fire strengthened this pattern because it changed what food could become. Cooking can make some foods softer and easier to chew, and it can change the energy a body obtains from certain foods. Processing food with tools also reduces some of the work teeth and jaws must do. For an aging body, these differences could matter. Teeth wear down with time. Chewing can become difficult. A body that depends only on raw hardness may suffer more quickly when the mouth weakens. A body living near prepared food has another possibility. This is not a claim that fire solved aging, or that all early humans always had cooked meals. It is a careful point about pressure. Human culture reduced some pressures placed directly on the aging body. The body still wore down, but the world around it had been slightly altered by hands, heat, tools, and cooperation. Shelter worked in a similar way. A place to sleep together, even a temporary shelter, could reduce exposure to cold, wind, rain, and danger. A weak body alone in the open faces one kind of night. A weak body near others, near fire, within a known resting place, faces another. The difference may be small in one night, but human aging is made from many nights. Many small buffers can become time. Many meals shared, many fires kept, many movements adjusted, many children watched, many injuries tolerated, many older bodies allowed to remain near the group. All of these can lengthen the space between decline and death. This is why slow human aging cannot be separated from the human-made environment. Our ancestors did not need houses or cities to change the terms of survival. They only needed repeated acts that softened direct exposure, a tool between hand and stone, heat between teeth and food, a group between one body and danger, a remembered place between wandering and shelter. These were not modern comforts. They were ancient buffers. They made human life less immediate than the lives of many animals. They allowed the body to lose strength without always losing every chance at once. In that fragile space, old age could become visible, not because humans defeated nature, but because they learned to place small layers of care between nature and the fading body. Human shelter began long before walls became permanent. It began wherever bodies gathered against the open force of the world, near fire, beneath rock, beside trees, inside temporary coverings, within familiar sleeping places, or simply close enough to one another that danger was shared. This matters because slow aging requires more than a body capable of living many years. It requires surroundings that allow weakness to last. A body exposed directly to cold, hunger, predators, injury, and weather may not have much time to become visibly old. The first serious loss of speed or strength can become final, but a body inside even a small human buffer faces the world differently. The cold may still enter, but not as sharply. Hunger may still come, but food may move from another hand. Darkness may still be dangerous, but others may remain awake, listening. The aging person may still weaken, but weakness does not always meet the environment alone. This is one of the quiet ways human culture lengthened the space between decline and death. It did not make old age easy. It only made old age more possible. Near the beginning of human life, these buffers were probably simple, uneven, and fragile. A group could not always wait for the slowest body. A hard season could tighten every decision. Injury, infection, childbirth, and starvation could still end lives quickly. But human beings were already changing the terms of exposure. Fire changed the night. Tools changed the hand. Prepared food changed the mouth. Shared attention changed the danger of sleep. Group movement changed the fate of children and the injured. These changes were not separate inventions floating above biology. They became part of the environment in which human bodies aged. A tooth does not wear in the same way when food is softened. A weak limb does not mean exactly the same thing when others can carry some load. A tired body does not face the same night when warmth and companions are near. The body is still animal, still mortal, still vulnerable, but the world touching that body has been partly reshaped by human action. This reshaping helps explain why human aging can be so slow compared with many animals. Many animals live under conditions where the body must answer most problems directly. Teeth must process food as it is found. Legs must escape danger immediately. Senses must remain sharp enough for solitary survival or competition. When these systems weaken, the margin narrows quickly. Humans narrowed that directness. We placed things between the body and the problem, a blade between hand and hide, a flame between cold and skin, a cooked root between worn teeth and hunger, a remembered path between wandering and danger, a nearby relative between a child and the open world. Over deep time, these small separations made life less immediate. They allowed the body to survive not because it remained strong forever, but because strength was no longer the only answer to every problem. This is where the ancient origin of human slow aging touches the later history of human life. Once bodies could live within layers of shared protection, old age could become a longer social fact. An older person might remain near the fire, while others travelled farther, might prepare lighter materials while stronger bodies carried heavier ones, might watch children while adults searched for food, might remember a safer route, a difficult season, a certain plant, a family tension, or a method that younger hands had not yet mastered. These contributions were not guaranteed. They depended on health, memory, group need, and circumstance. But the possibility itself matters. The human-made buffer did not only protect weakness, it also gave weakness time to remain connected to usefulness. That connection is part of what made aging visible. Human culture did not stop death. It delayed some meetings with death. It softened some edges, postponed some consequences, widened some narrow passages. Slow aging lives inside those postponements. It lives in the extra seasons after the body first becomes less certain. It lives in the meals shared after teeth are worn. It lives in the nights survived after strength is reduced. It lives in the care given to children by people who are themselves beginning to need care. The strange human story is not that we escape nature. We never did. The strange story is that, from very early on, humans built small shelters inside nature. and inside those shelters the fading body could remain for a while longer, still marked by time, still vulnerable, still part of the unfinished life of the group. Slow aging was never free. Every extra season given to a weakening body had to be paid for in some form. Food had to be shared. Time had to be given. A slower pace might have to be tolerated. A tired person might need rest when others needed movement. A body with pain, worn teeth, weak legs, or failing sight could not always meet the demands of the land as easily as before. From a distance, long human life can look like a gift. From the colder view of survival, it also looks like a cost placed on the group. This cost is one reason the question remains so difficult. If nature only favoured what was immediately efficient, then a long old age would seem hard to understand. An aging person may need more help and produce less direct labour. The body may consume calories without moving as far, carrying as much, or bearing more children. In a hard season, that could matter. In a small group near the beginning of human life, no resource was abstract. Food was gathered, hunted, carried, cooked, divided, and eaten by real bodies. Warmth required fuel. Safety required attention. Movement required strength. Care required someone to stop doing one thing and do another. To keep a vulnerable body within the living circle was not simply kindness, it was an allocation of limited energy. This is the cold truth beneath slow human aging. The old body remained only where the wider human system could sometimes bear the cost. That does not make old age unnatural. It makes it more deeply human. Our species did not become slow aging by removing cost. It became slow aging in a life where costs and benefits were spread across relationships. A child is costly too. A newborn cannot gather food, protect itself, or understand danger. Yet humans carried children because the future of the group depended on them. An injured adult is costly, but recovery might return skills and labour. An older person is costly, but may carry memory, care, social knowledge, or attention that supports others. Human survival was filled with such delayed exchanges. The useful thing was not always useful at the exact moment it was fed. The body that needed help today might have helped yesterday, or might help again tomorrow in a different way. This is very different from a narrow picture of survival, in which every individual must justify itself by immediate strength. Human life was more layered than that, but layering does not remove the burden. It only changes where the burden falls. Near the origin of our species, this must have created quiet tensions. A group could value an older person and still struggle to support that person. A person could hold memory and still be hungry. Care could be real and still limited. Scarcity could make affection difficult. Movement across difficult land could make weakness dangerous. A slowly aging body might be protected in one season and exposed in another. We should not imagine early human life as a soft circle of perfect care. The same social bonds that made old age possible also had to survive hunger, fear, conflict, and loss. That is why slow aging is not a simple triumph. It is a compromise. It shows that human beings became capable of carrying some weakness, but never without consequence. The body's decline could become gradual only when others absorbed part of the shock. Someone else might gather more food. Someone else might watch a child. Someone else might wait, share, warn, lift, or remember. These acts made human life longer, but they also tied one person's fate to another person's strength. The old body revealed the hidden structure of the whole species. No human life was completely private. At the beginning, the child survived because others paid the cost of immaturity. Near the end, the aging person survived when others could pay part of the cost of decline. Between those two forms of dependence, adulthood carried the weight of both past and future. This is why the slow human life is so strange compared with many animal lives. It is not only longer, it is more expensive in time, food, memory, and care. Old age lasted because the human world sometimes made room for it, but that room had to be made again and again, with every meal shared, every night protected, every weakening body allowed to remain. The mystery is not that humans avoided the price of aging. The mystery is why our species kept paying part of that price long enough for old age to become one of the visible shapes of being human. The cost of slow aging becomes clearer when we look at the group rather than the individual. A single aging body may seem like one private life moving toward weakness, but in a small human community, no weakness was entirely private. If one person walked more slowly, the movement of others could be affected. If one person needed softer food, someone might have to prepare it. If one person could no longer carry much weight, another body might carry more. If one person could no longer see danger quickly, another pair of eyes might matter. These costs were not symbolic. They were paid in effort, calories, attention, patience, and risk. Human old age, therefore, was not simply something the body experienced. It was something the group had to answer. This is why slow aging should not be described as a simple blessing. A longer life can hold memory, care, and continuity, but it can also hold pain, hunger, fatigue, and burden. Near the beginning of human life, before agriculture or stored wealth could soften many pressures, these burdens would have been felt directly. A hard season did not ask whether an older person had once been useful. It asked whether enough food could be found now. A dangerous journey did not pause because a body had carried knowledge for many years. It asked whether the group could move, protect, and survive. In that setting, slow aging was a difficult arrangement between value and cost. An older person might remember a path, but still need help walking it, might help calm a child, but still need food from others, might know a tool method, but no longer have the same steadiness in the hand. The same body could give and require at the same time. This mixed condition is deeply human, and it helps explain why the question of aging cannot be answered with one clean idea. If old age were only useful, there would be no mystery. If old age were only useless, it would be even harder to explain. The truth sits in the uneasy middle. Human groups carried some aging bodies because those bodies could remain connected to the living work of the group, but carrying them was never without pressure. This pressure may have shaped human social life as much as biology shaped the body. To live with slow aging is to live with unequal needs across time. The child needs more than it gives. The strong adult gives more than it receives for a while. The injured person receives more until recovery, if recovery comes. The older person may slowly shift from giving in visible ways to giving in quieter ways, while needing more support from others. Human life became a long exchange across stages, not a simple balance sheet renewed each morning. In many animals, the body must often meet the world with its own current ability. In humans, ability could be distributed. One person had strength, another had memory, another had skill, another had patience with children, another had knowledge of food, weather, or social tension. This distribution made slow aging more possible, but it also made dependence unavoidable. The group became the place where different weaknesses and strengths were held together. That place could be generous, but it could also be strained. We should not imagine that every group always chose care. Some may have been forced by hunger, distance, fear, or conflict to make harsh choices. The deep past does not give us enough evidence to speak as if all aging bodies were protected. What we can say more carefully is that human life created repeated opportunities for care, and those opportunities changed the fate of some weakened bodies. Slow aging survived inside that uncertain space. It did not require perfect compassion. It required enough tolerance, enough usefulness, enough kinship, enough memory, and enough shared need for some older lives to continue. This makes the human body's slow decline feel less like an isolated biological fact, and more like a social agreement written without words. The agreement was fragile. Today we carry you, because yesterday you carried us, or because tomorrow your memory may carry the child, or because we are bound together in ways no single body can fully measure. In that fragile agreement, humans became creatures who did not always abandon fading at the first sign of cost. And perhaps that is why our old age became so long, because human survival learned to live uneasily, with bodies that were no longer simple to count. The price of slow aging was paid most clearly when conditions became difficult. In easier days, an older person's slower steps, worn teeth, weaker hands, or longer rest might be absorbed quietly by the group. A little food could be shared, a task could be shifted, a child could be watched by someone who no longer travelled as far. Memory could move through speech, gesture, and habit. But in hard seasons, the same arrangement became more fragile. Hunger makes every mouth visible. Cold makes every resting place important. Movement across dangerous land makes every slow body part of the group's calculation. This is where the human mystery becomes sharper, because slow aging did not exist in a world of endless abundance. It existed in a world where food could fail, injury could spread trouble through the group, and care could become difficult even when affection remained. Human beings were not gentle because nature was gentle to them. They became capable of care while still living under pressure. That is why old age, in the human story, should never be made too soft. It carried dignity in some moments, burden in others, and often both at the same time. A body could hold memory and still be hungry. A body could calm a child and still need help standing. A body could remember a safer place and still slow the journey toward it. These mixed realities make human aging different from a simple tale of usefulness. The older body was not valuable in every way, every day. It was not useless either. It existed in the middle ground where human survival had always lived, between need and contribution, between weakness and belonging, between the individual body and the group that had to decide how much weight it could carry. Near the beginning of our species, this middle ground may have been one of the most important human spaces. The child had already taught the group that weakness could be worth carrying. The injured adult had already shown that help might return a person to usefulness. The aging person extended the same question over a longer time. How long can a body remain inside the circle when its strongest years have passed? There was no universal answer. Some lives would have been supported. Some would have ended before support was possible. Some aging people may have been protected because they were loved, needed, feared, respected, or simply because they belonged. Others may have faced abandonment, neglect, or death when the group could not bear the cost. The deep past does not allow one clean moral picture. But the wider pattern of human life suggests that our species repeatedly made room for dependence, not perfectly, but enough for dependence to become part of the life cycle. That room changed aging. It allowed decline to stretch. It allowed the older body to remain visible for years rather than vanish at the first loss of strength. It also made old age a reminder of something uncomfortable. Human life is expensive because it is shared. No one arrives independent. Few leave independent. The strongest years stand between two long forms of need. At the beginning, the child receives before giving. Near the end, the aging body may receive again, while still giving what remains through memory, attention, presence, or care. This long exchange is one reason humans grow old slowly compared with many animals. Our lives are not built only around immediate efficiency. They are built around delayed returns, shared burdens, and relationships that carry value across time. Slow aging was never free because time itself was never free. Every extra year required food from somewhere, patience from someone, and a social world capable of holding a body that no longer answered nature with pure strength. Yet, the fact that humans often paid part of that price tells us something deep about our origin. We became animals whose survival could include the costly presence of the weak, the young, the injured, and the old, not because weakness was easy, but because human life had grown too interdependent to measure survival by the power of one body alone. The fading body remained a question placed before the group, season after season, asking whether memory, care, belonging, and future generations were worth the cost of carrying time a little longer. Humans are not the only animals that can live long lives. Some whales, elephants, birds, reptiles, and other creatures may also carry time in impressive ways. It would be wrong to speak as if long life belongs only to our species. Nature has made many different bargains with aging. Some bodies last because their size protects them from many predators. Some live slowly because their metabolism, reproduction, or ecology follows a different rhythm. Some animals remain active for many years in ways that still challenge simple explanations. So the human mystery is not that humans alone can live a long time. The mystery is more specific. Humans grow old inside a life filled with memory, speech, dependence, teaching, care, and visible generational overlap. Our old age is not only a long biological tale, it is part of a historical life. We do not simply survive many years and then disappear. We carry names, habits, losses, stories, skills, debts, fears, and attachments through time. An aging human body can become a place where personal memory and group memory meet. That is what makes our slow aging different from simply being long-lived. A very long-lived animal may also have memory, social bonds, and learning, and we should not deny that. But human life placed these things at the center of survival with unusual intensity. The human child needed long instruction. The adult needed cooperation. The older person, when present, could remain connected to the future through care, knowledge, and belonging. This made old age part of a wider social pattern, not only an individual condition. Near the beginning of humanity, this difference would have been quiet and practical. A group did not need to know that it was creating history. It only needed to live through another day, another season, another birth, another injury, another movement across land. Yet inside those ordinary pressures, human time became layered. The infant belonged to the future but could not yet protect itself. The strong adult carried the present but also carried the young and sometimes the weak. The older body carried the past, not perfectly, not always usefully, but often with traces that younger bodies did not yet have. This layered time is one of the clearest differences between humans and many animals. We are not only long-lived bodies, we are bodies that live inside remembered time. A human elder may not be faster than a younger adult, but may carry knowledge of earlier hunger, earlier conflict, earlier weather, earlier loss, or earlier mistakes. That knowledge may be wrong in some moments, and age does not guarantee wisdom. But the possibility of long comparison gave human groups something beyond immediate reaction. It gave them continuity. Continuity is slow by nature. It cannot be rushed into a newborn. It cannot be built in one season. It depends on bodies lasting long enough for experience to gather and then move outward. This is why human aging should not be compared with animal aging, only by counting years. Years alone do not explain the shape of human old age. The deeper question is what those years do inside a human world. They may allow a person to become a grandparent, a witness, a teacher, a dependent, a burden, a comfort, a warning, or a memory holder. They may allow several generations to be alive at the same time, each one standing at a different distance from birth and death. This overlap creates a kind of living bridge. In many species, generations may overlap too, but in humans that overlap became tied to language, long childhood, cooperative care, and cultural learning. The older body could remain part of the group's unfinished work. That is why humans are not just long-lived animals. We are animals whose long lives became entangled with the lives of others. Our aging is biological, but it is also relational. The cells change, the muscles weaken, the bones alter, the senses shift, yet the person remains inside a network of meaning. A human being can grow old while still being a parent, a grandparent, a remembered child, a holder of losses, a keeper of small methods, or simply someone whose presence changes the emotional shape of the group. This does not make old age easy. It makes it complex. It makes aging a slow crossing between biology and history. Perhaps the most human thing about our old age is not that it lasts, but that while it lasts, it continues to touch other lives. The difference between humans and other long-lived animals becomes clearer when we ask what old age does inside a species. A tortoise may live through a long span of years, but its aging does not create human history. A whale may carry memory across oceans, and elephants may show deep social bonds, grief, learning, and long relationships. So we should be careful not to make humans sound alone in every meaningful trait. Other animals also remember, teach, cooperate, and respond to loss in their own ways. But human old age became tied to something unusually dense. Language, childhood dependence, shared food, tools, family lines, remembered places, and the passing of skills through many living hands. A human elder does not only represent a body that has lasted. That body may stand inside a web of children, adult children, grandchildren, younger relatives, neighbors, obligations, stories, and remembered events. In that web, age becomes more than a private condition. It becomes a position in time. Near the beginning of humanity, before written records, this position may have been especially important because the group itself had no storage outside living bodies. A stone tool could preserve a method only if someone still knew how to read its shape. A path through land could exist only if someone remembered where it led. A warning about food, water, conflict, weather, or illness could survive only if someone carried it forward. This does not mean older people always held the truth. Memory can fail, exaggerate, and harden into habit. Younger people can see what older people miss, but in a species that learns so much from others, long-lived bodies gave time a place to gather. That gathering is what separates human slow aging from a simple extension of lifespan. Humans are not just bodies that remain alive. We are bodies that become loaded with relationships. The same face can be someone's child, someone's parent, someone's grandparent, someone's teacher, someone's burden, and someone's last connection to a vanished past. This layering gives old age a historical quality. Many animals live within time, but humans live with a powerful awareness of before and after. We notice that a person used to be young. We remember what the body once did. We compare the present walk with the earlier walk, the present voice with the earlier voice, the present weakness with the former strength. Human aging becomes visible not only because the body changes, but because other people remember the body changing. That social memory makes old age feel long. A person's decline is witnessed, named, adapted to, and folded into the life of others. This witnessing may have ancient roots. A child growing beside an older person does not only see age, the child sees time made human. The older body shows that strength has a history, that knowledge has a cost, that survival leaves marks, and that a person can remain within the group after becoming less powerful. In early human communities, such witnessing may not have been spoken as philosophy, it would have been ordinary life. A child sees a slower hand shaping a familiar tool. A younger adult listens to an older memory of a difficult season. A mother receives help from someone whose own reproductive years are past. A group moves through land where some members carry speed and others carry memory. Human old age lives in this mixture. It is not only biological decline, it is decline surrounded by recognition. That recognition can be tender, but it can also be strained. A long-lived human may be loved, needed, ignored, feared, resisted, or cared for out of obligation. This complexity matters because it keeps the explanation honest. Humans did not grow old slowly because old age was always beautiful or always useful. We grew old slowly inside a life system where old age could still be woven into the survival of others. Other animals may live long, and some may age slowly, but human aging became inseparable from the way our species made meaning across generations. The old body carried time, and the group gave that time a place to be seen. That may be one of the deepest differences. Humans do not merely grow old. We grow old in the memory of other humans. Human old age also differs because it becomes a shared clock. In many animal lives, time passes through bodies, but it may not be gathered into the same kind of long social memory. A body grows, breeds, weakens and disappears, and the next generation continues. In humans, the aging body is often watched across many years by people who remember earlier versions of that same person. A child may know an older face only as old, but an adult child may remember the strength that once carried them. A grandchild may hear stories of a time before birth. A group may remember what a person once did, what that person survived, what that person lost, and what that person can no longer do. This makes human aging more than a biological process. It becomes a visible passage through remembered roles. The same person can be remembered as a child, a worker, a parent, a helper, a sufferer, an elder, and finally an absence. That layered recognition is one of the reasons human old age feels so long. The body changes slowly, and other minds hold the record of that change. Near the beginning of human life, before written history, this living record may have been one of the only ways time could remain inside a group. The old body was not a book, but it could be a witness. It could carry memory of places no longer visited, people no longer alive, and dangers younger bodies had not yet met. This did not make every memory true or every elder useful. Human memory is fragile. It can distort. It can fade. It can protect old fears that no longer fit the present. But even fragile memory can create continuity when no other archive exists. That continuity helps explain why humans are not just another long-lived animal. We became creatures whose old age was tied to the movement of meaning across generations. The animal body can last a long time for many reasons. It may be large, protected, slow to reproduce, or shaped by an environment where death does not arrive quickly. But human long life became entangled with teaching, naming, caring, mourning, and remembering. A person did not only age inside the skin, a person aged inside a network of attention. Others noticed the slowing walk, others adjusted to the weaker hand. Others remembered the former voice. Others carried the story after the body was gone. This social witnessing gave old age a place in human time. It also gave aging a strange emotional weight. An older person is not simply a body near death. That person may be a living link to an earlier world. In a small ancient group, such a link might have mattered when the land changed, when children were born, when food became scarce, or when conflict returned in familiar shapes. In later human history, this link would become even more visible through family memory, ritual, burial, story, and tradition. But the root is older than civilization. It lies in the fact that humans needed long learning and long care before they ever built cities. Because we needed others to become ourselves, we also became able to remain ourselves in the minds of others as we aged. This is a quiet difference from measuring lifespan in years alone. Two animals may live many years, but the meaning of those years depends on the life system around them. For humans, years gather into identity. A person becomes old while still being connected to promises, losses, children, skills, places, and remembered events. The body may weaken, yet the social person can remain present. That presence can comfort, burden, guide, confuse, or simply remind the group that time has depth. Slow aging is therefore not only the slow failure of organs, it is the slow continuation of a person through relationships while the body changes. This is why the comparison with most animals must be handled gently. Other animals have their own forms of intelligence, care, and aging. Human beings are not outside nature, but our old age became unusually historical. It carries biological decline, social memory, cultural transmission, dependence, and recognition in the same fading body. We grow old not only as living organisms, but as remembered beings, and perhaps that is what makes human aging so strange. The body may be moving toward its end, while the life around it is still gathering what that body has been. The meaning of slow human aging is not that humans defeated nature. We did not. Every human body still belongs to the same world as every other living body, a world of hunger, repair, damage, birth, dependence, and death. The difference is quieter. Humans became a species in which the body's decline could remain inside life for a long time. The weakening hand could still be held by another hand. The fading memory could still carry certain older paths. The slower step could still move within a group that remembered the person's earlier strength. This is why old age is not only a biological ending, it is also a relationship between the body and the world around it. A body grows old through cells, tissues, joints, teeth, blood, organs, and the slow accumulation of use. But a person grows old through care, memory, role, loss, recognition, and the presence of others. These two forms of aging meet inside the same human life. That meeting is what makes the question so deep. Humans grow old slowly compared with many animals, not because aging is gentle, and not because our species was exempt from danger, but because our lives became stretched across other lives. Near the beginning of humanity, this stretching began with the helpless child. A human infant could not survive alone. Its weakness demanded time from others before it could become strong. Later, the aging body asked a related question from the other end of life. Could the group still hold a person whose strongest years had softened? Could memory, care, kinship, skill, or simple belonging make room for a body that no longer answered every demand directly? There was no single answer. There never has been. Some lives were carried, some were lost early. Some older people may have been cherished, some tolerated, some needed, some feared, some abandoned when the cost became too great. The deep past does not allow a clean moral story, but across the long human pattern, dependence remained central. We became creatures who begin life unfinished, who learn through others, who survive through shared knowledge, and who often end life needing others again. Slow aging belongs to that circle. It is the body's reminder that no human life is a closed system. This can change how we hear the title's question. Why do humans grow old so slowly compared to most animals? The answer is not a single secret hidden in one gene, one tool, one grandmother, one fire, or one clever brain. It is a pattern made from many joined pressures. Slow childhood made long care necessary. A large brain made long learning valuable. Shared food and fire softened some harsh edges of the environment. Older bodies could sometimes carry knowledge after strength declined. Grandparents and other helpers could sometimes support children who were not yet ready. Social memory made experience useful beyond the present moment. Archaeological traces remind us that some worn, injured, and aging bodies survived long enough for time to leave marks. None of these points alone explains everything. Together, they show why human old age became possible as a long, visible, costly state. It was not a reward placed at the end of life. It was part of the whole human arrangement. The child, the adult, and the elder were not separate stories. They were three positions in the same slow river of dependence. This gives old age a difficult kind of meaning. It is not only decline, though decline is real. It is not only wisdom, because wisdom is never guaranteed. It is not only burden, because burden can still carry memory and love. Human old age is a mixed condition, and its mixture may be the most honest thing about it. The body loses, but not all at once. The person changes, but does not vanish immediately from the lives of others. Time takes strength, but sometimes leaves recognition. It removes speed, but sometimes leaves patience. It narrows the body, but can deepen the record of having lived. In that sense, slow aging is not separate from human history. It is one of the ways history first lived inside us, before it lived in writing, cities, or monuments. Every aging human body is a quiet reminder that our species did not survive by being strong at every moment. We survived by making time shareable. To grow old slowly is to live inside a long negotiation with time. The body gives up some things, keeps others, changes its shape of usefulness, and asks the surrounding world to respond. In many animal lives, that negotiation may end quickly because the environment does not leave much room for weakness. In humans, the negotiation can last for many years. A person may lose speed but still keep attachment, may lose strength but still keep memory, may lose independence but still keep a place in the lives of others. This is not only a biological fact, it is also a human fact. Our species made old age visible because our survival had already become woven with care. The child at the beginning could not live alone. The injured body in the middle sometimes needed support. The aging person near the end might need support again. Across all these stages, human life kept returning to the same ancient truth. The body survives longer when it is not left entirely to itself. Near the origin of humanity, this truth would have been practical, not poetic. A group that could carry children through long helplessness had already learned something about delayed value. A child who could not yet help might one day become an adult, who gathered, made, remembered, protected, or cared. An injured person who received help might recover and return to the group's work. An older person who needed food might still hold knowledge, attention, comfort, or connection that mattered in ways not measured by muscle. Human groups did not need to speak this as theory. They only needed to live through it, again and again, until dependence became part of the human life pattern. This is why slow aging should not be imagined as a mistake that somehow escapes selection, nor as a perfect gift. It is closer to a compromise. The body lasts because certain forms of repair, protection, and social support made lasting possible, but lasting brings cost. Every long life consumes energy. Every dependent stage asks something from others. Every aging body reminds the group that survival is not only the success of the young and strong, it is also the ability to remain connected when strength is unevenly distributed. This may be one of the deepest lessons in human aging. We are not made only of peak moments. We are made of transitions. Childhood is a transition into ability. Adulthood is a transition into responsibility. Old age is a transition into dependence, memory, and gradual release. Many animals have their own transitions, and many age in remarkable ways. But humans turn these transitions into a shared history. A person's aging is watched, remembered, interpreted, and carried by others. The old face is not only old skin, it is a record of relationships. The slow walk is not only weakened muscle, it is a movement through places that may have been crossed many times before. The tired voice is not only loss of breath, it may be the voice that once taught a child, warned a family, named the dead, or repeated a memory when no written record existed. This does not make aging less painful. It may make it more visible. The more a life is connected to others, the more its fading is felt. Yet that visibility is also part of what makes human life human. We see time in one another. We learn that strength changes. We learn that care moves in both directions. We learn that the body is temporary, but its effects do not always end at the edge of the skin. A person may grow old slowly because the body is declining slowly, but also because others continue to recognize that person through the decline. This recognition is one of the quiet shelters humans built. It cannot stop death. It cannot prevent loss. It cannot make every old age gentle or fair, but it can give fading a place inside life rather than outside it. When we ask why humans grow old so slowly compared with most animals, we are really asking why one species made so much room for time. The answer remains incomplete, as honest answers about deep history often do, but the shape is becoming clearer. Human bodies age slowly because human life itself became slow. Slow to grow, slow to learn, slow to forget, slow to leave others behind. In the end, slow human aging leads us back to a simple but difficult thought. The body was never meant to remain unchanged. Every living body is temporary. Every tissue carries the cost of use. Every breath belongs to a creature that must repair itself imperfectly, while moving through hunger, weather, injury, birth, labor, memory, and loss. Humans did not escape this rule. We only became a species in which the rule unfolded more slowly, more visibly, and more socially. Our bodies fade across years because the human way of living gave fading time to appear. The child needed years before becoming independent. The adult needed years to learn, work, cooperate, teach, and care. The elder, when life allowed it, could remain for years after peak strength had passed. These stages were never separate. They were different faces of the same ancient arrangement, a life too dependent, too learned, and too interwoven to be lived quickly. Near the beginning of humanity, this arrangement was not a philosophy. It was a practical condition of survival. A young human could not become human alone. A wounded person might survive if others made room for recovery. An older person might remain inside the group if memory, care, kinship, or simple belonging outweighed part of the cost. None of this was guaranteed. Some lives were brief. Some bodies were not carried. Some groups may have faced choices so harsh that care could not continue. But the pattern that endured was one in which humans repeatedly softened the direct force of nature around certain vulnerable bodies. Fire softened cold, shared food softened hunger, tools softened the limits of teeth and hands, memory softened ignorance, social bonds softened loneliness and danger. These things did not stop aging. They gave aging a place to unfold. That place is why the human old face is so meaningful. It is not only a sign that cells have changed, it is a sign that time has been shared. The wrinkles, the slower walk, the thinner voice, the tired hands, the long memory, the dependence that returns near the end, all of these belong to a species that became old inside relationships. A human being does not simply grow old in the body. A human being grows old in the eyes of others, in the memory of children, in the habits of a family, in the quiet spaces where care moves back toward the one who once gave it. This is not sentimental. It is not always gentle. Slow aging can bring pain, fear, confusion, and burden. It can ask more from others than the old body can return. But it can also carry knowledge, recognition, patience, warning, affection, and the living proof that survival is not made only from strength. The deeper lesson is that human life has never belonged only to the strongest moment. We begin unfinished. We learn slowly, we depend often, we carry one another unevenly, we become useful before we fully understand how, and we remain meaningful after some forms of usefulness fade. This is the educational value hidden inside the question. Human aging reminds us that a life should not be measured only by speed, productivity, fertility, or force. The ancient human body survived because many forms of value were allowed to exist together. The value of a child not yet ready, the value of an adult carrying responsibility, the value of an elder holding time, and even the value of a vulnerable body that teaches others what care requires. Compared with many animals, humans grow old slowly because our species made time into a shared environment. We lived long enough for memory to cross generations, for weakness to be answered by care, for experience to outlast youth, and for the body's decline to become part of the group's story. Yet even after all these explanations, something remains open. Perhaps it should remain open. Old age is not only a problem solved by evolution, it is a question that every human life eventually enters. If our slow fading was shaped by care, memory, cost, and the need to carry one another through time, then what does it truly mean to grow old as the one animal that cannot separate its body from the lives around it?